asked Vice President Salazar if he would please lead us in prayer, and then Majority Leader Heiner will lead us in the pledge. So please rise. All right, thank you very much. I would like to encourage all of our attendees to please sign in if you have not already done so. And so with that, we'll do our roll call. Ms. Cameron. I guess it would be Ms. Hart, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, it is me today. For Management Council, November 18th, 2025, Senator Crago. Here. Senator Guru.
I think he's going to be on Zoom later.
Senator Nethercott. Here. Senator Salazar. Here. Representative Bear.
Here.
Representative Haroldson.
Here.
Representative Heiner. Here. Representative Yan. Vice Chairman Beitman. And Chairman Nyman. Here. You have a quorum.
Ashley, next, I would like to go over a little bit on our decorum. We like to do this before our meetings to kind of give everybody an idea of what and how we plan on and will conduct meetings here today so that we have a good and robust conversation with due respect for all that are involved. And so I would ask that any address be made to me first as a chairman, everything, all the questioning and any recognition has to come through me first, and then I will recognize you, and then we will proceed from there. Beyond that, treat each other with respect. I would appreciate if something is said or done that you would feel like as if it would require some kind of an accolade, boo, clap, jump up, throw your hands in the air. Please refrain from doing that. We're going to try to keep this we're just going to keep decorum. And we're going to do a very, very good job of conducting this meeting today, and we'll allow all of you folks to have the opportunity to opine on the different issues that are relevant to you, and hopefully we can make it through this day quickly and be very efficient in our time. So with that, moving on, any legislators? Mr. Vice Chair, I would like to have you say some words if you would like, sir.
Steal this one. Oh, I would just like to take a moment to recognize Representative John Eklund. Got to serve with him 2 years in the House. He was a very great man, a kind man, a very effective representative for his district and the people of Wyoming. And John did it right. He was slow to get angry and quick to listen. And I think we could all take a page out of John's book and hope that we can all emulate him. And prayers to his family and those he left behind, and good ride, cowboy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well said. And we extend our condolences and sorrow for the family of John Eklund, and look forward to that. There is going to be some information coming out here shortly about where the services will be provided, and I'm sure they'll make that available to all of us. And so be able to join with that family if we possibly can and encourage them in this time of loss. So, all right, anything else from any of the other legislators that they would like to start out with or make any statements or anything? We good? All right, ladies and gentlemen, first item on our agenda is reports from our Select and Subcommittee, Select Committee on Gaming. Senator Cole, please. I'm going to slide over and start elbowing each other. We'll hopefully get some more mics. Got that one? All right. Good morning, Senator Cole.
Well, good.
How are
good.
you, sir?
I'm good today. We welcomed in a newborn baby yesterday, and
Congratulations.
a big baby girl. So everything is well. Thank
Name?
you. Delilah. I wasn't expecting that, Mr. Chairman, but yeah, Delilah, at 8 pounds, 4 ounces with the 99th percentile of head diameter.
Oh my, very smart.
Wasn't easy for mom, but all is well. Mom is recovering and baby is doing just great. She's a nice bouncing little baby girl, hungry and doing everything a girl should do when they're a little tiny newborn. So all is well, but wanted to share that with everybody.
Congratulations, a Christmas gift early. So
Indeed, and it's a great gift. Thanks. And but I wanted to start off by thanking Management Council for making the gaming task force, because there wasn't one in existence before you decided to make that move. And it was in response to, I think, the local control issue and really the gaming situation in the state of Wyoming that we're currently facing, where it's blown up so big, which is a good thing in some areas and a bad thing in others. And frankly, we need to do something to get our arms around it. And this gaming commission's first steps, really, I just say my priority, and Senator Crago's priority, was local control, the bill that we started off with in the Senate that had some issues and didn't go anywhere. And we worked that bill, and I'll just take these one at a time. Not in priority in order, but in priority. So this is one we started with, and a lot of questions were asked. Well, why wasn't something else done with some other areas of gaming? Well, it's because I think that to be successful, you need to focus in on priorities, and that's why that was one of the top priorities, to get something out to present to you who formed this task force to consider for sponsorship. So that bill was worked within the task force. I think it worked out well, in so much as we had a lot of input. I believe there's been some slight improvements to it, better than it was before. I think we have more cohesive buy-in from the Wyoming County Commissioner Association, WAM. We had language that they agreed to, which is, as we all know, always controversial, trying to get people to agree, especially under the circumstances. However, there was no other influence besides that kind of testimony. There was nobody, coming, changing the outcome for some other gaming enterprise. It's purely came out of the task force, that work. And I do support that work, and it was voted on and approved to bring in front of you. Now, I'll go back into order now. Sorry I jumped out of order. You threw me off with the newborn baby, or Delilah. So we'll start with 169. I'm just going to use the last 3 digits for brevity. It's the first one on the list from the cover letter from LSO. Gambling amendments. And what that is to deal with is the operations that are currently going on in the state of Wyoming that our county prosecutors, county attorneys, feel like they need more, more surety, more definition, more of something they can prosecute. They just didn't feel comfortable with the current language because what's called the bona fide social relationship. It could be kind of anything, of course, you could say I drink beer with somebody and that's a bona fide social relationship. And so that the definitions were cleaned up and then put sideboards on it. So it added in, I'll just give the highlights. Definition of profit. So basically if an establishment pulls a cut of said gaming activities, that would be defined as, not legal. And then the bona fide social relationship is more defined more closely. Those are the 2 highlights, and I'll just highlight some of these. And of course, the Management Council ask me any questions you want after I'm done. I'm going to try to present these as a block and then for further discussion. That was the first 169. Next is 149, and it's anti-money laundering. I'll just summarize that as organized crime. That was the good Senator Nethercott's attempt, and this is a rehash of that, which we had buy-in from the House at the end of all this conversation, which is an important improvement. So that's basically what that does. It's a cleanup bill that is needed in the state of Wyoming because of the gaming activities, and to try to make sure that we're doing things that we think are in the best interest of the public and cutting out, frankly, organized crime and those type of activities. That's what that bill is about. Then the 145 bill, I talked about the local control, and that was the number one goal of the task force when we started. And then the 168 bill, that's the HHR terminals, and it came out of committee, passed by a vote. I was not supportive of it, but you know, it's a task force vote, and it's here in front of us today. I've always felt that bill was an expansion of gaming in so much it would allow more HHR machines to be licensed, and then monetize those said licenses. That's my synopsis on it. When I'm done, I'll let my co-chair speak to it if she wishes to. Move on to Bill 279. Now, a bill with this large number represents where it's at in the chain of bills, and this bill came up as a last-minute situation because of what had happened with the skill-based games being put inside of the Smith's grocery stores, which currently the gaming terminals in Rock Springs have been shut down, and they're involved in an investigation now and executive action by the Gaming Commission. They issued these licenses, that is, they being the Gaming Commission, to let this happen, and it was really there's an issue in statute that they really didn't have much of a choice the way the statutes are written, and that's why they issued the license. So I would, and this addresses that, about stripping the ability to put them in that venue out. There's a little bit more to it than that. This is probably the bill, maybe if you want to have discussion on just maybe some of the details of this, I think it's probably deserving of more discussion. But this bill draft came about because of what had happened with gaming activities, putting them instead of grocery stores. And it's not just, I'm not picking on any, factually speaking, this is the store we're talking about. However, it opens the venue up for everybody, because the way the statutes are written. I think, to me, this is another high priority bill that we have to do something about this and basically at least we have to make a change. I don't believe legislatively it was ever the intent of the body to allow a common area like a grocery store where families go into to view these skill games, which are quite visible, I might add, for a lot of other details. But I think this is a very needed bill to try to wrap our arms around this and really for us to make a statement. Do we agree that we want to make our grocery stores places of skill games where little kids look at them and ask questions, which they have? I assure you, I've heard information from constituents that their kids see this and they want to go over there and play the games. And I think that's wrong myself. I think if you're over 21, that's an adult decision, but if you're a child, I don't want to entice children into doing this kind of activity. And that's the reason why that bill draft's there. I do apologize for the lack of work that we put into it because we just found out about this at our last meeting. So we did the best we could. I think it was super important, and so does my co-chair believe it's super important that we address this. And that's a summary of the bills and drafts for you. I just want to go back and briefly explain why the zoning mechanism isn't in front of you. And I'll just say it after review by the task force, it was voted not to be supported. And with that, there was a lot of reasons. Number one, I'll just say the number one reason after thinking about it for a while is the fact that the market is almost saturated, right? Let's just say it's 90%. So trying to control something at a point where there's already 90% saturation with a zone, let's just say zoning could work, wouldn't work because the horse is out of the barn, as they say, right? We've already got all these venues open, and they have a right to continue. It'd be what's called, I believe, a taking if we were to say you can't do that anymore, when they can. So zoning is a trap, frankly, a trap, because it isn't used in that purpose as testified to. And it didn't seem like it wasn't gonna work. So that's why it's not in front of you. And I was asked to give a brief explanation about just how this evolved. And that's one of the things that came about, is it didn't work. And that's why it's not in front of you. I mean, I wish it could work. I mean, I really do. But in the reality is, it doesn't. So it's not the way you control this kind of activity through zoning. Even if we could do it in the beginning, it wouldn't be a wise choice because of all the issues you'd have of changing what's currently you have a zone use for. And maybe my years as being a county commissioner has helped me in this spot, because I dealt with zoning a lot. And you find out what does and doesn't work, and what zoning does and doesn't do. So that's why it's not in front of you. I didn't support it. I just thought this wasn't going to get us where we needed to be in our local control bill that was worked by the House, overwhelmingly supported by the House, which is pretty well what this is. With the 100-mile rule still in here. And just briefly to talk about that, the 100-mile rule currently, as testified to, is irrelevant. Doesn't really mean anything in the year 2025 like it did, like back when I was a county commissioner in 2011, and at that point. So there was no need for it anymore, and the decision was made. The controversy that might happen because the 100-mile rule coming out wouldn't be worth it. But this, once again, is a management council decision. But after working this bill draft, it was decided that we're just going to keep it in. So that's the reason why it still exists in this bill draft, because of those facts as testified to. So that's what you have in front of you, committee. And I'll stand for any questions, and I hope I did a complete enough job explaining what I could, and happy to talk about something more if you want me to.
All right, thank you, Senator Cole. Representative Lean, did you have anything you'd like to add to this before we proceed on and we ask questions of the committee?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, and committee members, thank you for having us today. I do agree with Senator Cole that we did come out of this with priorities for local control. The House's priorities were to change definitions to clean them up so prosecution may be able to occur within the state of Wyoming when illegal gaming or gambling does occur. In the money laundering bill, in the definitions, bona fide social relationship with the cleanup definition provides a genuine connection between people who already know each other. This won't allow for a relationship such as something like Sam's Club, where you carry a membership card, to allow gambling. It clarifies and strengthens long-term social gaming exceptions as friends can play in their private home, at a backyard barbecue, or at a fraternal lodge, as long as nobody is running the house or turning a friendship into a business. It draws a bright red line for professional and underground gaming or gambling operations to pry on our communities, to take money from Wyoming pockets and operate in the shadows with zero oversight. Law enforcement wants clarity, prosecutors want precision, and Wyomingites who believe the government should stay out of their private living rooms but be able to prosecute those who are gambling in a public manner. This bill allows for our liberty with responsibility to occur. When it comes to the money laundering bill, the money laundering and the illegal investments, I would ask that you consider a conflict of interest clause if it be added to that bill. I did type up something to consider. I had 2 funerals this week, so I apologize that I wasn't able to communicate with management council the way that I would have hoped to. And so if we could even consider this during the interim, if you choose to move it or consider it into session, if you consider moving it forward, just so we have a chance to review that, but I'd like to put that on the radar. The House does fully support those. When it comes to the local simulcasting bill let me grab the number for you. So 26 LSO 0168. offers on page 2 at the bottom, a build-out clause that if you are permitted for terminals, that you must build out all of the permits that you're permitted for prior to asking for more terminals. On the top of page 3, there was an amendment during committee that passed 4-2 to change from 1,200 terminals to 3,004 terminals. 3,004 terminals is the current permitted for the most permits for one company, and that's how that number came about. The 1,200 number was because there are not 1,200 machines in operation for the current companies that hold permits for HHR machines. And so this was a large debate for the numbers, and so that's where those came from. I just want the committee to know that that bill was worked and zoning was considered. The local authorities already have the opportunity to zone, and so if they choose to use that in zoning law, they could still have the opportunity to do that. On 26 LSO 0145, the only amendment that the House would ask for is on page 7. Under at line 4.5 to insert section 3 with some kind of verbiage that says shall not put a monetary value on the local approval or denial process. The House believes that that would offer the opportunity for these permitting processes at the local level, but to keep the monetary value that may be associated with them off the table.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Nethercutt.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Lee. When you say the House, it's the House's position, what does that mean exactly?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercutt, the House's side of the gaming committee.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Ling, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When it comes to the skills-based amusement game, I myself question if this could be done through rule versus having to bring an entire legislation through a budget session process. There's different language floating around that is potential within that bill to amend it. I agree with Senator Kolb that we did not have an opportunity to thoroughly work it because we learned of this the week of our last meeting, and it came before us very quickly that the Wyoming Gaming Commission had permitted skills games to go in a grocery store when that was never the intent of skills games to be had. I would also like the committee to know that the company that has brought those into the grocery stores in Wyoming is not local, and that the Wyoming local skills games that are generating money in Wyoming for Wyoming companies did not have a hand in getting that permitted. Mr. Chairman, I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Representative Ling. Committee, questions of the good representatives and senators? Majority Leader Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Lean, you mentioned on Bill Draft 169 that on page 3, the number of terminals was originally 1,200, and this got amended up to 3,004. But Senator Kolb mentioned that the business is basically saturated as is, or 90% saturated, I believe is what he said. So in an effort to limit the terminals, you just, at 3,004, does it really limit the terminals? Because it just opens it up to everyone to have 3,000 terminals, and so you've placed the bar way above what the actual number of terminals are out there. Is that correct?
Representative Lean.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Heiner, I did not vote for that amendment. I will say that up front. The amendment was to essentially make sure there was no property takings. I have found Colorado case law that says that gaming or gambling is a privilege and not a right. And so I personally do not believe that if we were to cap the machines and then allow them to age out at the sell of the business to the next owner, that would not be a property taking. And therefore, the 1,200 number would stand firmly in my mind. I am not legal counsel, I am not an attorney. I invite you to speak with your legal representation to know that 3,004 would definitely increase the number of games in Wyoming, and 1,200 would hold it stagnant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As As a follow-up, I think it has in there that they would be grandfathered to a certain date. And so that could be handled within the actual bill draft with grandfathering the one that has 3,000 and limited the others to 1,200. But as a follow-up, another question I have, Mr. Speaker, if you don't mind, the Wyoming Gaming Commission allowed these terminals to be placed in a grocery store, fully aware this was a grocery store where minors would be traversing and be able to be walking through that area. Is there a lack of oversight from our Wyoming Gaming Commission that they allowed that to start with?
Senator, Representative, would you like to opine on that?
Well, if my co-chair wants to answer first, I will, but I definitely want to address that question. And I could do it now, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to.
Please proceed, please do.
Yeah, I find it kind of a bit hypocritical. And I do like the Gaming Commission. I sit there as liaison, but they did approve this. I mean, on face value, they approved this activity. And it is because the way our statutes are written. I mean, if they could have disapproved this, they would have. But they had counsel from the AG's office that said they had to approve. Clearly, the only way forward is to draft legislation, statutory change that gives them the authority to deny, because they didn't have it. They've already issued a permit, the permits to these people. They currently would be considered unfair, unequal, a taking, as it may be, if you wouldn't allow another permit applicant to get a permit to do the same thing that Smith's is currently doing. So clearly there's a need. Okay, I'm a little confounded on why the issuing agency, in this state's a gaming commission, would have issued a permit and then have frankly, the nerve or the confusion of turning around and saying, well, we could change our rules. Well, if you could have, why didn't you? I mean, I'm just an obvious fella, pretty, seems to make sense to me. Obviously, we need to have a statutory change. They are only as good as the rules we give them for sideboards. And then they draft rules from our statutes. And clearly, they lack the authority to deny. We're already in a conundrum, committee. We already are in a problem, right, because of what had happened. I can't change the past, but I can certainly be part of a future that we change. I think it's necessary by what had happened. Just logically, we need to change. I would have wished they could have done it. They can do a lot of things. They can do things like change the height of the barrier between the skill-based machines and like where the public looks. That's within the statutory authority they have. Just read it the other day. They can do that, but what they can't do is go around statutes. And so that's the reason why this is necessary, and that's the reason why it's in front of you, and that's the reason why the task force, supported it. And I'll just speak to that only probably because I've been around a little bit longer. The task force has said what they said. Whether I agree or not, it's irrelevant. I tried to do what I thought was right, but the information in front of you was voted for or not voted for by the task force. And but I do go back and say it is necessary that we do something about this grocery store skill game situation, else it's going to get worse. So I implore you to support that, please. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cagle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to point out, so just a little bit of mixing apples and oranges. So the grocery store issue is totally different than the cap on HHR. So just pointing that out. One's skill-based amusements, right? And the other one's HHR, have nothing to do with each other, have totally different approval process. And I just was going to note that, I agree with Chairman Kolb that I think we actually have to change the statute. Reading the statute, I don't think they could have prevented that by rule. I think the applicant was within the realm of what our statute says, which was pretty vague. And so I think we need to do something moving forward if we want to stop it, or at least give the commission clear statutory authority to stop it.
Thank you, Senator Crago. I just have one curiosity question, though. In all of the mix of this, when we talk about, well, pre-existing, grandfathered in, and things like that, and maybe the attorneys can help me with this, have we now effectively grandfathered in skill games into grocery stores that are going to be there? Or now can we come back after the fact, change statutes, and remove them? Because there's some discussion that we're saying now we can't come back after the fact and reduce the number of games or things like that. I'm just curious, in the skill game realm, are they now potentially grandfathered in, and a change in statute will require us or someone to have to compensate them for losing these revenue streams? Or, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider in that. I'm just kind of curious, once the camel's in the tent, I mean, do we have now ability to remove the camel, or is that camel there and we'll have to pay them to remove it?
Mr. Chairman, let me, I guess, clarify this. Great question, right? Great question. What can we do? You know, the Gaming Commission issued a permit, right? It would, from what I know, and I'm not an attorney, from what I know about the situation is that permit will run its course, the issuance of that permit. That's why taking action as soon as we can is important. Because as soon as we take action and change the law, permit renewals come up. And within that permit renewal period is when they wouldn't have the ability to renew said permit. So it's a great question because it involves everything else we're talking about, right? It involves local control, the permit issuance. So the break point is when this permits, from my understanding, get renewed, that's when they can be revisited. So the sooner we get something in place legislatively, the sooner they can take action on these issues.
Thanks, Senator Cole. I need to get to Representative Lane. She had a question. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to add a little bit of clarity to this, the Wyoming Gaming Commission followed the law when it's labeled as establishment. And the problem the Gaming Commission has come into that we heard testimony on from the director was that the address encompasses the entire building. So if the liquor license is issued to Walmart, it encompasses the entire address at Walmart. It doesn't encompass just the liquor store square footage at Walmart to put the gaming machines. And so the clarity within this legislation that they need to put it inside the liquor store now makes the vendor have to decide if they want to sell liquor or if they want gaming machines inside that liquor store establishment. And so the Wyoming Gaming Commission issued the permits, from my understanding, on that piece of the legislation, which is 1125-102A XVI. One other thing to consider is that if we do nothing, there are places like Mavericks and Exxons that also have liquor licenses, and there's a real potential that they could end up there. And so I do agree with Senator Cole that this does need to work. My question about rule came from the lack of time that we had as a committee to work it. And so I am at the full discretion of Management Council, but I do agree with Senator Cole on a unified front that we need to do something to make sure the skills games go inside the liquor stores as was the intention of the law.
Thank you, Representative. Questions? Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for your work. So started out kind of in that TRW world, and so I got a little taste of this at the beginning of my legislative career, and there's a lot of holes and a lot of conversations that need to be had around it. So I'm going to get us back to 26 LSO 169 on the gambling amendments. I do believe this is good to clean up. I do have a question. Is this going to take the VFW bingo night out of base? Is this going to address the fundraiser by the booster club that might do big bucks bingo or something like that? I just want to make sure that the net we're throwing doesn't create conflict at the same time. So just first question there, and then I'll have some follow-ups.
Committee?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, yeah, we had a lot of conversation about it. It was absolutely, never was the intent to have any impact on that. But you know how that goes with intent and good intentions. This was drafted in a particular way in what it says there on defining people getting a profit. Like so that was believed to protect the situations like the Elks Lodge or whomever having the thing we always wanted to do, and it's turned into this illegal activity, right? So there's safeguards built into this bill that clearly define what you can and cannot do. So what it really did is it's crafted around the issue with people running actually gambling operations, and then the inability to prosecute. To answer your question directly, if you look, those things that I had pointed out as the sideboards, those are believed to be the protections that, as long as you don't fall under that, it's just as it was. So basically, it took what we had and skinnied up and said, well, if you're getting a profit, you know, if you're getting a cut, then it's going to be considered illegal gaming. So to answer your question, my belief is we've addressed that, Representative, Mr. Chairman.
Follow-up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for that explanation. And I felt that, but I wanted to make sure of that because that'd be the only thing I see as being problematic. Moving on to 26 LSO 145, the local approval for simulcasting. Talk to me about the 100-mile radius conversation and kind of what you guys had as conversation in that, in regards to kind of this age-old conversation of the 100-mile radius and local control. And obviously, this is shifting that a little bit and having some direction change. So can you guys talk about a little bit about what that conversation looked like?
Yeah, I can. I'll start. Co-chair.
Senator Cole.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Representative
Please proceed.
Harrelson. Yeah, so I can just tell you, it's a long and sordid tale because Senator Cole was a county commissioner back then and dealt with this directly about the 100-mile rule and the reason for it and why it was in the beginning. So I'll give you some history. Back in 2011-12, when the horse industry was being resurrected, we had a track between Rock Springs and Evanston, i.e. a little bit more, you know, within 100 miles, I think, as the crow flies is how it went, not by the road mileage. So the idea was that we didn't want to kill a track. We wanted to promote live horse racing. That was our number one goal. And with that, the 100-mile rule served as a barrier to take away participants that would go to the track. Because back then, you actually showed up at a track and, you know, you watched the horse racing and you were involved with that activity. So that was the case back in the day. Well, what's happened is that the industry's consolidated. We have basically partnerships between multiple organizations. The industry's gone into HHR, which is another topic. Basically, HHR feeds the purses for the live horse racing, right? That's my belief in the purpose of HHR, which we've yet to tackle. But we're just saying that they're connected in that way. HHR didn't exist back then. When the 100-mile rule came around, it didn't exist. And the 100-mile rule existed before my time as a county commissioner. I will just tell you, as my personal experience, that was why we thought it was important to keep the 100-mile rule. And I was a supporter of said 100-mile rule up until, you know, the bill that came across from the House. I supported the 100-mile rule and kind of was opposed for it taken out. But after testimony and information that we received, it came to light that the 100-mile rule was not needed anymore. So the reason why it's still in here is, frankly, it was, why would we want to cause controversy for something that means nothing? That's a kind of just a, you know, armchair way of saying it. That's why it's still here. It didn't do anything. It doesn't do anything. It's irrelevant. So why do we want, you know, in a perfect world, I'd want it out of there because it's irrelevant for the green books. But, you know, we're dealing with people. And sometimes people like the 100-mile rule. I don't know. I'm just going to tell you, as somebody who sat there and listened to all this conversation, it came to be at the end, doesn't mean anything. So my own opinion changed for somebody who was involved, and that's my personal journey with that 100-mile rule. And Representative Lane, you want to say?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you,
Representative
Mr. Chairman. Yes, we did also hear from one vendor that did actually use the 100-mile rule and shut their doors, and there was some community backlash. Not only that, but they didn't go to the track, they just went to their phones. And so the state of Wyoming is, one, this select committee did not take up iGaming, which is a whole nother topic. There's so many topics that go with this. You could have a whole committee committed just to it and spend 5 years trying to get the regulations right for the state of Wyoming. That's my personal opinion. But when we heard the testimony about how this impacted the business, it was in a negative manner, not in a positive manner. And the truth of the matter is, in today's world, people will go to their phones and they won't go to the track.
Representative Harrelson, follow? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, and two more. sorry, two more questions. One on 26 LSO 168, the limitation on historic horse racing terminals. I think kind of, and we mentioned this back when we were in management council originally, and I've kind of mentioned this through my time here. The struggle that I have is the HHR is turned into a casino. Now, you may sit there and say, oh, no, it isn't, and we can tell you all the reasons why it isn't. Public perception's everything. And I actually I've had many constituents say, have you seen all the casinos popping up in Cheyenne? And the reality is that's how they perceive it. Now, I could talk about how inside those machines, different things are going on than in a normal slot machine, but what they see is they see kiosks that look like slot machines and they think it's a casino. And so we are, I believe, close to that saturation in areas of the state. We've had that conversation. And I look at this as 3,004 terminals as being an expansion of gaming, not a retraction of gaming. And I think that there's a point where how are we going to long-term address a flaw that we're dealing with here? And the flaw is public perception is that Wyoming is a gambling state. And we could talk about how that isn't the case, but again, you could give facts when the realities are what people see and think. And so, Senator, if you could just speak to, and I don't know if 1,200 was the answer. I don't know. I'm just asking the question, and I'm not saying there's a silver bullet for this, but I think there's a conversation that needs to continue of going, why would we put 3,000 in there and continue this onslaught on our state?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Colt, please.
Representative Harrelson. Yeah, I think there's two different subjects here, right? We got like the reason why we got HHR, and you're right, they do look like slot machines, and the average person thinks they're a slot machine. You're right. They don't know the nuances and the differences. I find it's kind of funny, right? Because they seem like slot machines to me too. However, the purpose of HHR is to feed the purses for live horse racing, right? I think that's pretty clear. The question about expansion or having more machines, that's the question. You know, the committee voted for this. I did not. For the record, Senator Craigo did not. That's okay, though. I mean, I'm here as the chairman, co-chair of the said committee, and so I got to try to explain this as best I can. I'm sure Representative Line, if the chairman would so wish, could speak further on this. But in so much as the number of machines, I don't disagree with what you said. I think it's exactly right, and it's also even worse than that. It's monetization of the machines, of the licenses, which is worse. It's like a little liquor license. So that's why I didn't think it was a good way to go. I think there's parts of that bill draft that are good. I'm not saying it's all like bad. There's good parts in there, but it takes time to ferret this out. I think we didn't have enough time, frankly. We only had so many meetings to kind of skinny it down a bit and talk about things that we need to talk about instead of trying to wrestle with the taking and all these things you just heard about. So that's how it evolved into what it is. It's certainly, in my mind, imperfect. However, it's in front of you as management council to decide. But I will say, just for everybody, if you didn't know, the HHR machines are part and parcel with live horse racing. Now the question comes up: do we want to change that percentage? Because right now that's another topic for another day. But there is something to be said about that. And what are we doing? I think we have to do a much better job of getting our arms around this because it's out of control. And this is just the first steps in trying to get our arms around it. Chairman, Representative, we're doing the best we can. I'm sorry it's imperfect. We're trying. I just want you to know we're trying. Whether we agree or disagree on certain things, we are honestly trying to do the best thing for the state of Wyoming.
And I'm good.
Follow up? Representative Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, if you could expand on the conversation, or maybe Representative Lean could, on the difference between the 1,200 and the 3,004. I understand that the permits have been issued for 3,004 machines, but the maximum of any company of actually having a machine is 1,200. And so there's this gap of several machines here that there's a permit for, but there's no machine yet. Do we know that company's plans for those permits? If we were to take action to say, reduce the limit to 1,200, what would happen to that company and their plans?
Senator Gold?
Yeah, I'll take the first part of that, Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear. So the reason why there's permits issued and not machines is because people are building out facilities. The very good question comes up, though, is just how long do you get those permits for a placeholder, right? Because obviously, business people, I believe, would try to get as many parked as they could, for the future. The question comes up is, why are they sitting out there? So that we need some assurity. The short answer is we need assurity for the people willing to invest in the state of Wyoming for these large multi-million-dollar facilities, which are turning into a destination instead of just taking over a corner store downtown. They need assurances that there's going to be machines there to use once they build the place out. And the question is just how long is reasonable? And that the Gaming Commission is wrestling with this right now. And that's within their rulemaking, oddly enough, that they can address that. So the question does come up. The reason why you issue permits before there are physical machines, because there's not a physical building, would probably be the simplest answer to that. And they're doing it so when they invest, they know they can put a machine in at the end of the day. Now, another conversation about how many machines, right? And what's appropriate. So the reason why we have permits without machines is for that reason. That was the explanation, Chairman, Representative Bear, on why we ended up where we're at.
Representative Lean, would you like to expound on that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Bear. Yes, so in the business world, is my understanding that these gaming machines run about $20,000 each. The intent of the cap bill was to consolidate to a high traffic area, that if they're capped at a certain number of machines, the business would likely put those in the most high trafficked area to be able to make the most profit. The other intent of this is to tie it to live racetracks. Which was the original intent of HHR machines, is to get people to the racetracks to revive a dying industry and to increase agricultural needs in Wyoming. I have visited with some of the horsemen and some of the folks that grow the feed for these special racehorses, and that part has been accomplished. The Wyoming Bred Program is expanding. When it comes to the HHR terminals, and these are different than the skills-based terminals. In skills statute, you can have 4 per location. In HHR, there is no cap on how many can be in one place. And the business plans, as my understanding, are here in Laramie County and in Uinta County. There are 2 specific buildings currently being built that would house these mini casinos, as they've been referred to, that are HHR machines. There are some numbers for you. The Wyoming Downs LLC, these numbers come from the Wyoming Gaming Commission. They currently are permitted for 2,310, and I apologize, I didn't write down their current operating number, but as of 4/1 of 25, they were operating 1,221. Wyoming Horse Racing is permitted for 3,004, and they're currently operating 1,032. And 307 Horse Racing is permitted for 1,369. They currently are active 1,043, and there is a 4th track member that has not run any current live race days that did not build yet, but they are permitted for 283 machines, or were. And then Thursday and Friday of this week, the Wyoming Gaming Commission has their annual conference, and those permitting processes for giving and taking permits and live race dates for 2026 will be set.
Representative Bear, follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, these large facilities that are being planned, do we know how far along the planning is with these companies? For instance, the one that has permits for 3,000, where are they at in the building process and the planning for putting these 1,800 machines in? And another question is, in a large facility, as you mentioned, how many machines would go into one large facility?
Representatives? Senator?
I'll try to make a swipe at this. I think there's people in the room that'll have those particulars, Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear. But to answer your question, I'll just talk about my locality, and I don't represent Uinta County, but over there in Evanston, they have currently under construction, moving dirt, building stuff right now. And there's a huge amount of machines set aside for that facility because it's a multi-million-dollar investment. In that particular facility, the business plan is to have those folks come from Utah to come up here to Wyoming to game, which is another nuance to the people like, say, in Cheyenne here, they would have Denver folks. So we're talking about more than just Wyoming participants, patrons coming to these facilities. They're getting so big and focused, which is probably a good thing because they're in a location now instead of spread out all over downtown, wherever. They're becoming more of a destination, frankly, Mr. Chairman, Representative, than they ever were before. That's kind of maturing. Now, while HHR, the purses have in fact done all these things that we're talking about for the increased in live horse racing, the breeders, everything that is connected with this circle of business has been expanded. And I'll just say the only reason why it's expanded is because of HHR. Now, and we haven't gotten there yet about what's fair as a percentage for the purses. That's another conversation. But to answer directly the question, there are facilities under construction, Mr. Chairman, Representative Bear, and there's some folks in the room that probably could do a better job than I about giving you the details and where they're at and how big they are. And I can just talk about the one I'm aware of. There's one in Green River also that they're currently working on with permits set aside. So there are, it's not just smoke and mirrors, I suppose is really what I want to say.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Co-chairman, both I guess, more of a philosophical question as to, did the committee consider, I know you didn't have much time and we put you on the spot, but did the committee consider other options, maybe outside the box, going back to Representative Haraldson's point about the casinos, and what we as legislators hear about from our constituents is the explosion of what they appear or what they consider casinos in their neighborhoods and their downtowns being overrun with these casinos. Has there been any discussion or thought put to, because HHR is the problem, why not put those back on the track and say, you can have your slot machines at the horse tracks only, and you can have as many as you want. You can have a huge casino out there at the racetrack, but that's the only place you're going to be allowed to operate these slot machines. To me, that takes care of the problem that the public is bringing to our attention of having casinos everywhere, downtowns full of them, this town included. That way it takes those machines, puts them out at the track, because if it's really about the horses, it shouldn't be a problem, right? So why not put it where the horses go? If they're running a race, great, because we're actually doing live horse racing, which is what this is supposed to be all about. And then otherwise, if there's not a race going on, you can sit there and put your whole Social Security check into a slot machine and walk out feeling happy or sad or whatever you do. But any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair.
Senator Colt, please.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of thoughts on that. It did come up as a question. It's one of those things on the table to actually potentially expand, HHR and doing exactly what you just mentioned. I will say, just thinking about what you just said, you put the HHR machines where the people are, because that drives the industry. And if I would just think that there'd be a detrimental effect on the amount of participants, they wouldn't just go to the track, because our track, let's say in Sweetwater, is at the events complex, and it does many things during the year. So I think it would be detrimental just talking about what it would change. I mean, and I get it. Sometimes we don't really care about the detrimental part of it. And economically, right? We're talking about people's welfare. And you're right, I don't go gambling. I don't go out to the track. I don't participate. I get no thrill out of it, especially losing, which I tend to lose, so I don't do it. So in so much as where we would put them, that conversation's evolving. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, we haven't gotten anywhere with it. Like you said, there's a lot of things on the table, but that definitely is a topic of conversation. What are we going to do about that? Because it's going to come up, because the way there's some rules that stop it from happening right now that can be changed but it would basically be an expansion unless we curtail the other outside activities. And that certainly is a good topic. I can't do it justice, Mr. Chair, Mr. Co-Chair, because first I heard about, this position. It's a valid point, and it needs to be talked about, but I'll just tell you, as the feeding the live horse racing goes, it's probably going to be a negative, not a positive, to keeping the industry going. And I've heard that most folks I want live horse racing. I think that's a good thing for us. So I don't think it's going to help that, not in that isolated way, as a singular place to put the machines. But certainly we can do a better job of putting the machines in maybe we think is a more appropriate area locally. And the local control bill goes a long way to get us there. Is it perfect? No, it's not. But it's the best attempt, and it's workable legislation that improves what we're doing now. But I can't really give a great answer, Mr. Chair and Mr. Co-Chair, because it's a topic that we need to really vet out more fully than I can do on the spot. But I'm sorry, I probably fell a little short on a great explanation, but it's the best I could come up with for myself.
Follow up, Mr. Co-Chair? Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
Majority Leader Hunter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Lean, I appreciate you and Senator Kolb's efforts. This is a heavy lift, and I appreciate the time and effort you put into this. Representative Lean, you mentioned the numbers of HHR terminals in the state, actual versus permitted, and I tried to go through the numbers as you read them off, and there's about 5,000 actual terminals in the state, and that may be about 60% of what's permitted right now, and these are just rough numbers I was trying to do in my head while you're talking. But with 5,000 active terminals in the state, looking at what Virginia has done to limit their HHR terminals, they have a statewide cap of 5,000. We're already there, and we have permitted another 3, 4, 5,000 with potential more growth. So how are we, did your committee consider a statewide cap like Virginia has done?
Representative Lean?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Heiner, thank you for the question. Yes, I'd also like to mention that Virginia has a population of 8.1 million people, and that with that 5,000 machine cap, their horse racing industry is not nearly as robust as Wyoming's has been with our Wyoming bred program. I do believe that Wyoming is at saturation level, and the committee did review those numbers multiple times over, and as they would change, the commission would update us at each meeting. To get to the 3004 numbers in the cap bill is merely for a property taking, to make sure that there wasn't any company that was building one of these larger facilities that had put in upwards of $20 million to lose that or to take the state to court. That is the justification of which the committee changed the local control bill, or the cap bill, from 1,200 to 3,004. I personally think that we could, as a state, have put this together with caps to begin with. Unfortunately, that's not how it got started. To go back to President Beitman's question, 16 days is what the tracks are required to run, so 16 live race days. As Senator Kolb mentioned, 2 of these tracks are leased to the county fairgrounds. One of them is privately owned. The one being built will be privately owned. So to drive people to those race tracks for 16 days a year may not feasibly produce the robust horse racing that was intended when these HHR machines were permitted. Furthermore, the reason that the committee did not take up something like that is because the business models that are out there were to purchase some of these restaurants that have liquor license, or liquor license themselves, to turn them into HHR facilities.
Follow up? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This summer, I've had the opportunity of traveling through Riverton quite often as I traveled to Casper for committee meetings. And I observed the casino there in Riverton, very empty. The parking lot is empty. The building is not very full. So I talked to Representative Posey about the casino there that the tribes have. He says they're actually laying people off. They've laid quite a few people off because people are not traveling to the casino anymore. They're able to do that in their own hometown. So have we considered the effect that we're having on our tribes by having all these HHR terminals throughout the state as we're expanding and saturating our communities with these terminals, and what harm it's doing to our tribes?
Co-chair?
Mr. Chairman,
Kathleen?
Representative Heiner, we did hear from Mr. McNiven in regards to the casinos that are on the reservations. And he did tell us that they have laid off approximately 500 employees because of the lack of need for them because of the expansion of HHR machines. He also compared their revenues to 2012, and he said that they were down significantly. And when you look at the 2012 to 2025 economies, they're very different. And so that gave us pause for concern. There has been no study that was given to the committee to review that showed the implications of HHR machines specifically against the reservation casino.
Senator Cole?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, obviously, it has an impact, obviously, because I don't know, there's probably a big mix of things here, the COVID business and the craziness that happened, the settling down of the said business model on the Indian reservation, or they're a sovereign nation. And as with that, I guess that's their business. And there was no testimony, nothing connected the two together, HHR machines or the gaming in the state of Wyoming. I probably should make it really broad because it's expanding. And I think beyond that, online gaming, which is full-on Vegas-style gaming going on, I think that probably has a bigger impact. Now that I had a chance to think about it a little bit, I think that has an impact that we haven't, talked about, which is the reality of where we live now. Anybody can pick a phone up and game away, right? Lose all your money, do whatever they want to do, I suppose. So we're dealing with that. Reality is online gaming is quite active and growing. And if I was really to fathom a guess, I would believe that had a larger impact than the state of Wyoming's HHR machines do. People like to, they like to go to their own locality, Mr. Chairman, Representative Heiner. They like to go stay in their own home area, and they're looking for convenience. And I think the HHR machines probably give them that convenience. And I think that might have a bit to do with it also. But I think mostly online gaming that we're all facing is the reality of the year 2025. So I think that's an impact. But we had no direct testimony to answer the question that pointed towards anything that the state was doing that was directly impacting the nation's gaming activities.
All right. Thank you, Senator. President Bateman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This goes right back to my previous question, though. I'm getting mixed signals. Representative Lean talked about, made the point that, yes, like in Sheridan, our famous longtime family-run pizza joint turned into a casino, and that was sad. And our community members were like, man, this is getting out of control. What are you guys going to do about it? What I just asked was, why not put all those machines at the actual track? You can build yourself a little casino at the physical premise where the horse racing takes place 16 days a year. And then the rest of the time, if you want to go play slots, you go to the horse track or you go to the casino on the reservation, period. I mean, why not just do that? Why? Because as Senator Cole just said, people want the convenience. So who are we trying to please here? Are we trying to please the gamblers that want to just go to the local corner and not have to drive to a horse track? Or are we trying to answer the question, which I thought this whole exercise was about, was reining in gaming and trying to get this thing under control and somehow get the toothpaste back in the tube, because we created, our predecessors created this monster for us, and now we've got to clean up this mess. So I'm getting mixed signals. Are we looking out for the gamblers who want convenience and we want to just explode? If that's the case, rip the Band-Aid off and let's not do any caps. Let anybody get into this game and to make as much money as possible, and we'll have casinos on every corner, just like Montana and Vegas and everything else. Fine. If that's the policy direction we want to go, let's do it. But if we're trying to get this thing under control, which I thought we wanted to, which one is it?
Senator Cole, it's a great question. I'd love to hear this answer.
Well, thank you for the support, Mr. Chairman. The answer is we are getting under control. In the local control bill, and that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the number of machines, which I'll reiterate, I was never in favor of expansion because I see it as all those things I said. Not in favor of that. However, it came out of the task force. I've done as much as I could as a chairman, as a co-chair in this case. So that's why it's in front of you. I don't want to expand gaming. What I want to do is make it represent the community. We have a community that may or may not want it. And the goal is to give them a choice, a real choice, because right now there is no real choice. Once it's allowed in a county, even though it was voted for 20, 30 years ago, it's in the county and nobody can stop it right now. Nobody has control. Once it's allowed in by the Board of County Commissioners, that's just the facts, proven out by court case. And so where are we at today? This is an attempt, a first stab at this. And people have tried to deal with this for, I don't know how long, as long as I've been in the legislative body, after it's blown up. This is what we've tried to do to improve the situation. And this is an improvement on the situation. No, it's not maybe where we want to be philosophically, but it's where we're at now to improve and get some control back to the local entities that are voted for by the people that live in that locality, say, city council, county commissioners. That was the goal. Now, this other conversation about the machines changing the number and all the complexities about a taking and it has to be this number and that number, I don't believe that gets us where we want to be. I don't, but it's a little unfair of me. I'm sure most of you folks have been chairman of a committee before and you understand the rules about speaking for a committee. The committee's done what it's done. And, and I'm here as that person who was one of the representatives of that committee as a co-chair. So, no, I'm not going to be concerned about the cap bill going away because I think it doesn't do what I'd like it to do. But within that bill, to be fair about it, there are some things in there that are probably good things. But that's not the bill draft we have in front of us. We got what we have. So I think the rest of the work we did helps, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman. It helps. I think I'm not God, right? I don't have the perfect answer for anything, but I will try. And you set me off with that task to deal with this. And this is what we've got. And our product is an improvement. That I can assure you. It's an improvement of what we're doing. And that's why we're here in front of you today to tell you, well, why. Mr. Senate President, Mr. Chairman, whatever our direction is, we'll get her done. We'll get her done, but give us some time.
Follow up, Mr. President? Any others? Questions for the committee? All right. Thank you both. Appreciate your time and efforts in this. And I realize this is not a simple task. It's an extremely heavy lift and there's a lot of moving parts. But it's obvious that this is definitely not over. And we're far from getting this thing under control. So I look forward to public comment. That is our next option. Thank you. We have three openings up here at the desk for those three, and this is public comment. I would encourage you to come if you have something you'd like to share on these 5 pieces of legislation we've just discussed. Please fill the chairs. Senator.
Mr. Chairman, this is just a procedural matter. It may be helpful in light of the scope of the public comment. I don't know. My experience is that the gaming industry actually never comments publicly, despite all the stakeholders always filling the room. It's radio silence, so we never actually hear their position on anything publicly. But assuming we would, as if this was normal legislation, would we want to take each bill draft at a time and hear comments on that? So if there's any proposed amendments or changes, we could more thoughtfully handle those and then dispose of each bill. Just Chairman's preference.
That's an excellent suggestion, and it will certainly keep the confusion down. And so, yes, we do have a lot of things here to take care of, so we would like for you to speak specifically to the bill, and the first bill that were for our consideration in numerical order is where we can start if you have, which was, help me out here, 145.
On the list, we got it's 169.
Yeah, well, we can work off the list. 169 was our first bill. Does anybody want to come up and speak on 169? Don't flood the chairs, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, you were close. Okay, moving on then to 169, next bill on our itinerary.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to
Well,
work the
that's all I'll
bill?
have to do next. I mean, is there no other public comment or any questions from the committee?
So then let's work the bill.
So we'll work the bill, and then we'll go on. Seeing none? All right, let's work the bill.
Move the bill.
Move the
Second.
bill, seconded by Representative Haroldson. Discussion. Representative Senator Craig.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just, I think Representative Haroldson maybe had a question about veterans organizations, et cetera. So that's covered in a part of the statute that is not shown in the bill draft. I think we didn't have any questions about that during the select committee's work on this, so I think we should be fine. We'll double check between now and session, but there's a whole section within 67101 that exempts out veterans organizations, charitable organizations, religious organizations, et cetera, from fundraising. So,
Perfect. Thank you.
Very good. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the bill's been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying, we'll have to take a roll call on this, so, okay, roll call.
Mr. Chairman, for 26 LSO 169 gambling amendments for Management Council sponsorship to 2026 budget session, Senator Kringo.
aye.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salazar. Representative Bear.
Aye.
Representative Haroldson.
Aye.
Representative Heiner. Representative Yin is excused.
He has sent a vote in, it has a nay.
Nay, okay. Representative Yin is nay. Vice Chairman Beitman. Aye. And Chairman Nyman.
Aye.
It is, sorry, 9 aye, 1 no.
All right, that bill moves on. Next bill for our consideration, and we will take public comment on that. Was 16, which one was, where's my list there? You got to pull it up there. 146. Oh, we have some.
Which, Mr. Chairman, just so everybody knows, that's the money laundering, anti-money laundering draft.
26 LSO 0146, working draft number .6. Public comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Affie Ellis. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, Schreck. I'm here today representing Cowboy Racing. We want to be brief with our comments, but we want to lend our full support for the need for this bill. And so I want to thank Senator Nethercott for being the original bringer of it. You might recall last year, there was a Spectrum Gaming Group that legislature, I think, spent $200,000 on looking at the state of gaming in Wyoming and developed some recommendations on things we could do to improve our statutes and regulatory landscape. This was high on their list, and so it is an important bill. And just want to remind the committee that we did spend all that money to have that study done. There are a lot of recommendations contained in that bill that hopefully will be forthcoming in future legislative sessions, so just don't want us to let that report sit on a shelf. With that, happy to answer any questions, but this is a very important bill. I would offer anecdotally, I have visited with law enforcement in Laramie County and our district attorney. She and I served on a gaming panel together. I do think there is concern out there, just making sure that Wyoming has the tools to address anti-money laundering at a state level and not necessarily have to rely on the federal government if, the suspected activity doesn't reach certain thresholds, which I know Senator Nethercott knows a whole lot about that topic. So happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Committee, questions for? Thank you. Any other public testimony? We don't want to miss you. Here's your chance. Okay, close the public testimony. Committee, what is your pleasure? Bill's been moved by Representative Haroldson. Is there a second? Seconded by President Beitman. Discussion. Question being called. Ms. Phillips?
Mr. Chairman, for 26 LSO 146, anti-money laundering for Management Council sponsorship during the 2026 session, Senator Crago.
Aye.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Nethercott. Senator Salazar. Representative Bear.
Aye.
Representative Haroldson.
Aye.
Representative Heiner.
Aye.
Representative Yin has left an absentee vote of no. Vice Chairman Beitman. Chairman Nyman. 9 aye, 1 no.
That is passed. All right, next bill for our consideration. For Which one, trying to figure out, I pulled this out of my system here, and I had them scattered around here because we were circulating to the point. 145. 26 LSO 0145, local approval for simulcasting. Any public comment? Okay. Ms. Ellis? Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Affie Ellis with the law firm of Brownstein, representing Cowboy Racing. I'm providing a handout. I know that these bills have been worked, but to Senator Nethercott's point, this bill was very contentious last year. And so we want to make sure that our position is known and on the record for this committee. Especially if this bill advances, we want you to understand why we had concerns and appreciate the time that has gone into continuing to look at this issue. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of history in the bill that's before you, and I find it interesting there was not a full explanation of what's actually in this bill. I think you just got a summary saying it was worked by the Select Committee on Gaming, but you'll see it's a substantial bill. It's 20-some pages, if that memory serves. Maybe not quite that long, 15. But some of you have worked on a version of this bill back in 2024 when the Joint Appropriations Committee had looked at gaming as an interim topic, and I know there are some familiar faces on this committee. At the JAC's first hearing, which was held in May of 2024, attorneys for the 3 existing operators provided a letter to the committee which stated, there are 23 different counties in Wyoming, all which have varying interests. A strong gaming commission can balance those interests and ensure consistency in the industry. In this letter and another prior testimony that our operators have provided to various legislative committees over the years, the existing operators have not been overly optimistic about local control. One of those representatives said that they should not be subject to the whims of local government or to cronyism. So it was at the JAC's June 2024 meeting that the JAC considered 25 LSO 51, which then was version 4. It was titled Parimutuel Events Municipal Approval. This was a really short bill. As you know, under the statutes, it says if you want to operate a gaming facility off the live racetrack, you have to get permission from the county commissioners. So municipalities said, well, what if the gaming facility is located in municipality? Shouldn't we have a say in making that approval? So that's what that bill version did. It said if you're going to be having a gaming facility in the city or town, they're the ones that provide the approval. If you're having it in the county, then it's the county. It was a very straightforward and short bill. Cowboy Racing has testified and has supported and continues to support this concept. So I just want to be clear on that because the issue continues to come up. It was at the same hearing in June of 2024, however, when the Wyoming County Commissioners Association provided a draft bill that represented the county's desire for notice, public hearings, the ability to impose reasonable conditions on operators, such as hours of operation, number of machines, et cetera. Importantly, the county commissioners also wanted the ability to revoke an approval based on good cause. At the JAC September 2024 meeting, these two concepts of what WAM wanted and what the county commissioners wanted, they had merged into one bill, and that was Working Draft 8. Around this time, my client, Cowboy Racing, had just announced that it had been approved by the Wyoming Gaming Commission to conduct live horse racing in Laramie County. For those of you who are unaware, Cowboy Racing built the Thunder Plains racetrack, which is located about 10 miles east of Cheyenne. To date, Cowboy Racing has invested millions of dollars in this state's first mile-long full-size track. Coinciding with Cowboy Racing's coming onto the scene in the late fall of 2024, the bill draft that I had mentioned continued to evolve significantly. At this time, I know we like to use a lot of phrases in the legislature talking about Christmas trees and how people start hanging ornaments on Christmas trees. Well, that bill that I mentioned that combined WAM's interest in the county commissioner's interest had become the tree, and people started hanging ornaments on it. For example, one ornament that we had great concern about was at the October 31st, November 1st, 2024 JAC meeting, there was language added to the bill to repeal the 100-mile rule. The 100-mile rule, as we've discussed, is a geographic protection for the local track, and it was an important reason why Cowboy Racing decided to invest in building a track in Laramie County. So if you look at the map that I've handed out to you, it kind of explains, there's a visual representation of what the lay of the land looks like. If you look, and I think most people get the operators confused, I've heard that a ton of times, and prior to working on these issues, I got them all very confused too. Wyoming Downs is represented in red. They have a red star in Evanston, which represents their track. That is a privately owned track. Wyoming Horse Racing has a leased track, which you heard about in Sweetwater County. They're represented in the map as being blue. And then prior to us coming on the scene, 307 Horse Racing was the newest entrant into that market. 307 Horse Racing leases a track from Campbell County in Gillette. And then finally, Cowboy Racing. We recognize that a lot of gaming facilities pop up in Cheyenne because of our proximity to Colorado, and we are the largest city in the state. So Cowboy Racing looked at this, and if the 100-mile rule were being enforced, we've proposed 3 locations for, as you heard, 283 games. And if the 100-mile rule were enforced, every operator would either contribute to our purse money on the days and times of the races, or they would have to close their doors. We've repeatedly said we want to negotiate. We want them to keep their doors open, but we do think that the reason that, that's the enticement of why Cowboy Racing came to Cheyenne, and that's the connection to horse racing, is that the HHR machines aren't just to generate money for taxes and the Breeders' Fund and all those other things that are required in statute, but also to contribute to the purse money. That's the enticement or the incentive for someone to build a track and bring live horse racing here. So we really reject this notion that it's an antiquated or outdated or ineffective tool. In fact, it is a significant reason of why my client has invested millions of their private money into building this track. So, talking about that, it was back working on this bill, sorry I lost track of this a little bit. You might remember that in 2021, this was a very contentious issue. A former representative brought a standalone bill to repeal the 100-mile rule, and it was debated in the House of Representatives. Very contentious, took up a lot of time, and it died on a 23-37 vote. So it was I'd also mentioned that the 100-mile rule was at the heart of the contentious case that happened in Campbell County when 307 horse racing entered the scene. So all of this is to say that a bill that combined WAM's interest with the county commissioner's interest now had become a vehicle for an ornament, the 100-mile rule repeal. In addition to the 100-mile rule repeal becoming an ornament added to this Christmas tree, there were other add-ons that we felt were targeted directly at Cowboy Racing. By the December 2024 JAC hearing, there was additional language added to 25 LSO 51. This time it was version 12 of the bill. It would have given existing operators or renewal applicants a right of appeal if they were denied from city or county approval. However, as the new applicant, or any new applicant, we would be denied a right of appeal. So that language is added. Cowboy Racing at the JAC hearing in December of '24 requested that the bill draft be amended to reinsert the 100-mile rule and to provide due process to all applications. Our request wasn't even considered. So the bill moved out of the JEC, went to the session in 2025, was assigned a House number, and although it passed out of the House, it did not advance in the Senate. Thus, leadership from the Management Council created a select committee on gaming to work on these issues, and we have attended every hearing. And I want to thank those legislators who served on that committee. It was a tremendous amount of work this past interim. Sitting before you today, I want to express our appreciation that this current bill draft has the 100-mile rule reinserted in it, and thank Senator Crago for addressing our concerns about due process. But we want to be clear, this bill is much more palpable to us because those two issues are addressed in this bill, but if they were to go away, our support for this bill would very much go away as well. Along Senator Reitman's comment about getting mixed messages, I think we've been in the same position. We've been getting mixed messages too. On the one hand, we hear about people saying we want to rein in gaming, get it under control, but then on the other hand, we hear from local elected leaders who say, well, we like the revenue it provides. So what are we to do? And I think that that question has been something that we've struggled with throughout our interim work. So we believe that the bill before you on local control provides no assurance that the number of games will actually be limited or that gaming will stop. Our concern, though, is that it will stop new gaming from new applicants, which would be us, and allow the existing operators to continue to grow their gaming empires. So to be clear, the only way for legislators to control the number of machines in the state is for the legislature to come up with some kind of control on the number of machines in the state, which is the next bill, and I'll address that when that time comes. So if someone has come to you to say that local control will control the growth of gaming, that really should be alarming to you. Cowboy Racing entered this market to elevate the standard of live horse racing, and they hope to make that we've made a huge investment in our track, and we hope that other tracks will do the same. We also similarly hope to elevate the standard of gaming in Wyoming. We know there are some properties that are really great, and we just want the opportunity to compete for that business in that market. Competition in the marketplace is a good thing. So that leads me to my second point. I don't think all the parties see eye to eye on how we define local control. We have testified throughout this interim that we support local control. And to us, that means where the facilities are located, getting approval from the city or county, depending on where the facility is located. We agree on the ability to impose reasonable conditions, such as hours of operation. In short, we support the when, the where, and the how of how local governments regulate all kinds of businesses that it normally does. But what we do disagree on is the ability for local governments to decide the who can do business. The Gaming Commission requires background checks to ensure that operators do not have unsavory things on their criminal backgrounds, and they make sure that companies have financial stability for their proposed projects. It is the Gaming Commission who is tasked with ensuring that reputable people are engaged in this business. We have expressed our concerns about allowing local governments to make this determination, and for good reason. In 2014, there was a case in the 8th Judicial District of Wyoming involving Wyoming Downs and the Sweetwater County Commission. In that case, the Sweetwater County Commissioners denied approval of Wyoming Downs' request to open an off-track betting facility in Sweetwater County. The court opinion letter stated, the Sweetwater Board made several comments about the effect that Wyoming Downs' proposed gaming facility would have on Wyoming horse racing's business, both its off-track and live-track business at Sweetwater County. Wyoming Downs at the hearing argued that it had a right to compete, to which one of the county commissioners responded that it was the board who had the authority to determine who could operate businesses within their county. Thus, Sweetwater County denied Wyoming Downs' approval, and Wyoming Downs sued. The 8th District Court judge, then Judge Kautz, who later served as a Wyoming Supreme Court Justice and now serves as our Attorney General, he sided with Wyoming Downs. He found that the denial was arbitrary and capricious, outside the county's authority, and even farther, unconstitutional under Wyoming's Equal Protection Clause. In its decision letter, the court stated that local governments may not exercise their authority to prevent competition based on concerns rooted in economic protectionism. This holding is at the heart of our concerns and why we are so adamant about the need for due process and judicial review, particularly if we're denied. Throughout this interim, we've heard a lot of discussion about market saturation and a desire by some local officials to make that call about when enough is enough. As the newest entrant into the market, our proposed facilities would then be the most vulnerable. Judge Kautz's decision letter stated, competition should be managed by market forces and not local government, which should not be placed in a position of deciding whether more or less competition is a good thing. And so when I talk to you about this, I don't think most people realize that we only have a handful of operators opening these facilities statewide. Wyoming Downs and 307 last year announced a joint venture. Wyoming Horse Racing stands alone, so really, aside from cowboy racing, there are only 2 operators in the entire state of Wyoming. So that is our concern about monopoly and duopolies.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Nethercutt.
thank you. Quick question. Ms. Ellis, you just quoted from a case, who, was that from the Wyoming Supreme Court or from the?
No, ma'am, it was from the 8th Judicial, sorry, Mr. Chairman, it was from the 8th Judicial District.
From Judge Kautz?
Correct.
Thank you.
Further in this
Please
letter,
proceed.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Further in this letter, he said, any prohibitory ordinance must be general and uniform in its operation, and if it tends to create a monopoly, it cannot be sustained. So members of Management Council, that is our concern. We don't want the creation of a monopoly or duopoly in the state of Wyoming. So we do not support the creation because of monopolies or duopolies. We ask that if this bill advances, that it do so with the 100-mile rule intact and with the due process protections provided in paragraphs H and J found on pages 9 and 10. In conclusion, and I promise you I'm getting there. As you work the bill, we have one request for an amendment. On page 2, line 13, we ask for some clarifying language about what type of simulcasting permit the municipalities and counties can revoke. These are site-specific permits, and I think there's been some confusion about whether or not these revocations are revocations of your gaming license rather than your site-specific permit. So we would accordingly ask and respectfully ask that the committee insert the phrase site-specific before the word parimutuel, so that the definition would read, a simulcasting be defined as a type of site-specific parimutuel event. Beyond that request, we'd also note that the phrase good cause exists in a few different places. Page 7, line 23, page 8, line 10, page 9, line 6. It's defined in one of those areas, but not in others. Mr. Chairman, I had a chance to visit with one of the local council members who represents the city of Cheyenne, and I think that needs some thinking out, just so there's a good meeting of the minds. I don't know what the examples of that good cause mean, but we could go down that path. We've heard in Laramie County, there's a lot of reliance on Wyoming liquor laws and defining what good cause mean. I've done research on this, and I couldn't tell you what my research produced. I don't know that I understand what the intention is. So hopefully that could be better fleshed out. I know it's also improper for presenters to ask committee members or legislators questions, but I wanted to flag some language that Senator Crago had worked on. On page 9, lines 11, 13, these were one of the reasons for revocation or to deny a permit. And it adds this language of the welfare of the people residing in the jurisdiction. I believe this concept was borrowed from existing statutes dealing with liquor laws, but that language in liquor laws talks about people living in the immediate vicinity. So the word jurisdiction, we're not sure what that means. Not obviously asking you, but if that's something that comes up in your discussions, we'd welcome to better understand that. I have more to say. There's a lot of things going on this bill, but Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you for your time in bringing up this topic. We will testify also on the CAP bill. There's some separate facts I can provide to you, so you hopefully get to the drilling down the question that Representative Bear have of the status of the projects, where some of the growth might happen, those kind of things, but happy to stand for further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Committee questions for Ms. Ellis. President Biden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mrs. Ellis, you mentioned earlier that, the only way to really get to, one of the solutions is to limit the number of machines, but is it also not a solution to limit the locations? Like I've been saying all morning, to actual horse tracks. You said there's 4 tracks in the state of Wyoming currently. What are your thoughts on that? And then I have a couple more questions.
Okay, thank
Ms.
you.
Ellis,
Mr. Chairman, Senator Beitman, great question. When I say we, I don't think any of us was serving in 2013 when we authorized HHR. So when we talk about inheriting an issue, yes, this is something that we all inherited and have worked on for a long time. When Kentucky, they were in the same conundrum that Wyoming was in years ago. They had a dying horse racing industry, so they said, okay, we're going to authorize the use of HHR machines to prop up our live racing industry. And so they tackled it in a different way. And they actually kind of adhere more to what that 100-mile rule requires, but they had more kind of tracks in place, so it was easier for them to do. In Kentucky, they have 9 permitted tracks, and I've made myself, and I'm gonna kind of show it to you, but it's a very crude map that I made just to kind of illustrate what it looks like to me. But that's what Kentucky looks like. So the way they define, or the way it works is each permitted track, represented by heart stickers I had on my desk, they are allowed to build a gaming facility at their track, and then 1 extension or satellite facility. So for their 9 tracks, they'll have a maximum number of 18 facilities. You'll see that for the most part, they've really targeted their borders, trying to get border traffic. Kentucky, I believe, has about 4.5 million people in it. Interestingly, on the Kentucky Gaming website, that's not the name of the regulatory body, they just reorganized, so I apologize, that's not their proper name, but their regulatory agency. They track the number of HHR machines. So I looked back in April of 25, and I think there were somewhere around 4,000 or 4,500 games. That number has continued to grow. I believe it's over 8,000 right now. So there is the question of where should they be located. Certainly I think the localities want to have a say in where that is. But to your point, Kentucky also had a big decision point years ago. They didn't like their skill-based amusement games. So they figured out a way to phase those out. That's been the subject of litigation, but my understanding is that's the most recent court casings have held, and they've gotten rid of their skill games. So Representative Lean talked about how licenses are, a privilege, not a right. I do think there is a way of phasing out approved machines. However, I don't think we got deep in that conversation during this interim. I just would offer that I think our biggest concern is right now, one of the operators is permitted for 3,000 games. That involves the construction of large facilities, primarily in Cheyenne and in Evanston. The other operator, they've got a construction project. I know that they've transferred one facility from the Terry Bison Ranch to a new proposed facility that will house 600 games. These are all big numbers. We've only asked to date for 283. We're the newest entrant in the market. So what we are asking for you is some of that balancing act. A moratorium would benefit our competitors, because if you're guaranteed 3,000 games, good for you, and the other guys are guaranteed 2,000, 2,500 games, we're at 300. Like, we've changed the rules significantly based on the investment that we've decided to make. So that's where I think there's some ideas at the cap bill, and I hear what Representative Harreldson's saying about being concerned that it's an expansion. But last year, I believe JAC was looking at a bill that would have capped it at 2,000, which was then the highest number. If they had done that, we would have almost hit that build-out number. For operators, 8,000. But because we've waited to do a cap, that number continues to grow. And so I appreciate the concern theoretically, but if Wyoming had imposed a cap 5 years ago and said you get 1,000 games if you have a racetrack, then it would be very capped and very managed. So just maybe another way of thinking about that. But sorry, I went on a tangent, Mr. Chairman, but this, I just wanted you to know Kentucky did it very different.
Okay, follow up.
Follow up, Mr. President.
So how much, since we're on the discussion of his HHR and how it was brought about to save the horse racing, I could go off about how we could save all kinds of things with slot machines, and we could put slot machines at softball fields to save local sports and let them raise money to promote local sports. I mean, you could go on and on and on. That's a slippery slope. How much money does horse racing make? Butts in seats. How many people, first question, how many people go to horse races? Number one. How much money does that bring in? Physically going to a horse race, just like we would go to a rodeo, and those purses, they don't need slot machines for purses for rodeos. There's corporate sponsorships, there's attendance fees, merchandise, all the things. Why horse racing? Why bring gambling into Wyoming for horse racing? Is it about the horses or is it about the slot machines? That's my second question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Biden.
Please.
Great questions, and I'm not the best person to answer that. Cowboy Racing started building and constructing its racetrack last year. They had hoped to have race operations up and going for the fall of 2025, but because of tariffs, steel, electricity, getting stuff out there, they've had to pull their permit request, and they've reapplied to open for race days in 2026. Things are moving along, the project's going well, and so to your point, I don't have that data because we don't have a racetrack open. We don't know how many patrons it has, and then we have not even turned on one machine. And Cowboy Racing will not turn on a gaming machine unless until it knows it will provide those 16 race dates mandated by Gaming Commission rule. So I apologize, I don't have that information. That would be another question for somebody else. The second part of your question, I think what we've also seen too is just kind of that confusion, right, of why do we have this activity? I can tell you that my client saw all the gaming activity in Cheyenne and started asking around, why do we have these casinos? I thought gambling was illegal. And the question was, well, it's supposed to support live horse racing. As someone who lives in Cheyenne, I have never traveled to Rock Springs or Evanston and or Gillette to go watch a horse race. I probably will never do that. But I think that if we're gonna have all this gaming activity in Cheyenne, the people of Cheyenne should at least have the opportunity to have live horse racing, because that is the connection. So that is why I've decided to lend my hand in supporting their project and looking at some of this legislation, is because I think that that is the tie, and that was the promise that was made to us as legislators back in 2013, was we're going to grow the number of live horse racing places. And so if you look at this map I provided you, if you look at Casper, if you take away something like the 100-mile rule, there is no incentive to build a racetrack or lease a track in Casper. There's no incentive. The 100-mile rule provided the incentive to bring live horse racing. So I get the desire to limit the number of games, but in doing so, you will limit the attractiveness for people to actually bring live horse racing. And it's just so hard. The horse is so far out of the barn. It really is it's hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube. So throughout this interim, we've been trying to come up with maybe not perfect solutions, but ideas to control the growth. And so when we talk about caps, when we went before the Laramie County Commission for our approvals, that was one of the questions we had. When's this going to end? When's this going to stop? If you cap it, you'll know. 4 operators, 2,000 games, 4 operators, 3,000 games, whatever, you'll know the number, and then that'll be the end of it. But if you don't have some kind of cap, I think, like Kentucky, you're just going to see those numbers grow. And so it is, and, I'm telling you, it's not like my client loves the idea of a cap. So if you decide not to do that, that doesn't hurt us either. But we're trying to be proactive in offering it as a solution in lieu of a moratorium.
Mr. President, follow-up? Any other members? Questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Ellis.
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to take note that
Senator Nethercutt.
former Senator Tony Ross, who was here in 2013, is currently present in the room. Welcome, former Senator Tony Ross. I took his seat in 16 when he retired.
Welcome to the chamber, sir. Okay, committee. Any other further public comment? Yeah, if you're going to come, by all means, there's 3 open chairs up there. Please make your way up there so I know that you're there. And if you want to speak to this bill, please get up here so we can hear your testimony. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to double back on what was said about the Gaming Commission, to be clear, my witness, the time I've been there and listening to the comments, they have never, repeat, never turned down a permit request because of market saturation. They do an analysis and they go through it and they say, this is the number of machines we have, and that's the end of it. They go through, like check a box, okay, we did that. But they've never turned down. There's been situations where there was more than the population would normally demand, clearly, but they have no ability to turn that down. So they just go through the procedure. They do ask the question, but there's never been a permit, I'll just say it this way, there's never been a permit denied because of oversaturation. The only time that I've seen anything come into play is when there's some, criminal activity, or say some applicant fails the criminal background check. Clearly, they have the right to deny for that. But other than that, that's it. There isn't anything about any more, there's no denial for the, like I say, for the saturations. I thought there would be, me sitting there as a new liaison, but there's not. They go through it, I think they check the boxes, they do what they can do within statute, and their authority does not allow them to deny because of oversaturation of a fiscal analysis. That doesn't exist. It has never existed. I'd be interested to hear what the Gaming Commission would have to say, but my time is witnessing the evaluation. There's never been a denial because of those things. And I still would implore the Management Council that there's a problem, and we need to give them more tools. And that was my testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Cole? None? Thank you, Senator. Who would like to go first?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members
Mr.
of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the county commissioners. I am joined by Dr. Mark Rinney with the city of Cheyenne, and his director is with members elsewhere at a national conference and can't be here, so I'll try and represent both of our perspectives on this legislation, and certainly he can jump in where necessary.
Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, I thought it might be helpful to provide just a little bit more background on historic horse racing in Wyoming, in particular the local landscape. So if you're not aware, historic horse racing can only happen in those counties where a vote of the people has authorized that particular activity. And currently, as of today, only 16 counties have received that authorization. We did have at least one county more recently reject that. The voters of Park County rejected allowing for historic horse racing and simulcasting in that particular area. To break down those 16 counties, only 13 of those have actually authorized HHR. The Board of County Commissioners have authorized HHR to exist. So if you went to Teton County, which the vote took place in the 1960s, the commissioners have never authorized for HHR to take place. And again, we've got a couple of additional counties. I believe Weston and Platte are the other two that have not currently authorized, even though the voters have said that's an acceptable thing to happen there. I think it's important to also break down a little bit further what the power of your county commissioners, because they're currently the only ones with the local element of say in this issue. It's important to really dissect that a little bit. First, the Board of County Commissioners, if you go into the statutes, it's really just one line. And it essentially says that the Board of County Commissioners can say either yes or no as to whether that activity can take place. Now, some boards have taken it a little bit further and have decided to enter into agreements with operators and establish some principles about what that will look like locally, but it's still to be determined whether that is actually a lawful practice. We don't know. Frankly, it's the reason that you don't see Teton County in particular get into this space. They're concerned that even if an operator did sign an agreement with them, that they might end up in court at some point and the court would toss that particular jurisdiction, and now they would be left with gaming happening that they didn't otherwise want to happen there. And we do have Supreme Court decision that backs up that particular, you can only say yes or no, and that was a Campbell County case. It did go to the Supreme Court, and they said, really that the statutes only say you can authorize it, and then all other regulatory jurisdiction resides with the Gaming Commission. Now, what happens when they say yes? Do they have to continue to say yes to every operator? You heard about the Sweetwater County case. Essentially, that court said, yeah, you can't, as a Board of County Commissioners, say no once you've said yes, is essentially what that case says. So we've been in a sticky position for a few years, and it's the reason that I first started approaching the legislature several years ago to say, hey, can we look at the local governance aspect of this particular issue? And at that time, I brought forward 4 issues that I thought were important for you all to take up as part of that. One was this local governance issue, including when appropriate, and I want to emphasize that, when a permit should be, when a Board of County Commissioners or locally, you might be able to revoke a permit. We also thought it was important for public notice and input in the process. There is, outside of, say, the Gaming Commission and a Board of County Commission meeting, there is no defined process for public notice or input. We have had issue with the 100-mile rule, and frankly, to be very honest with you, my members have been all over the board on that. Some of them wanted to protect the 100-mile rule. Others wanted to get rid of it, that it's antiquated, that it really is ultimately problematic. And then others that have said, well, at least if it's going to happen, we should go to the county rule, because as you probably can see from that map, what happens in Laramie County probably shouldn't impact what happens in Platte or Goshen County or Campbell County and Johnson County and others. So that one, and then the 4th issue was problematic gaming. I was very happy that iterations of this bill addressed at least 3 of those issues. We're down to just addressing 2 of them, and we can talk about that later. Mr. Chairman, there's been a lot made of sort of the city and county relationship. I'll be honest, we've never had a disagreement around what that should look like. We've worked on lots of iterations of that relationship. It's never our intent that there be a dual permitting process, and I'm happy that the bill that's before you sets it up so that my members continue to be involved in decision-making within the county. But that ultimate authority, if it's inside of the municipality, resides with the municipality. It also gives some ability for the city to give input to county commissioners if it's within the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the municipality. But I want to emphasize, there's been no rift between us. The rift has been others that perceive we have an issue. Mr. Chairman, The current bill before you would advocate that you move that particular legislation forward. I know you've heard amendments both from members of the House side of the committee as well as the last speaker. I'm just hearing of those today. I would ask that you resist taking those up. I really do believe that we've had a good track record of working collaboratively to ultimately figure out these issues, and I'm happy to work with Chairman Lean and with Cowboy Racing and others on this issue. I'll close with two last things. Certainly, as part of that discussion, we'd love to talk about the 100-mile rule and what that should look like. Should it be the county border, et cetera? The due process piece, if you go into the liquor license statutes, which is where my version of this issue started, that's just an exact replica of what came out of there. The intention was never to target any of the operators that exist in the state of Wyoming today, but give us a tool so that we could say no with some certainty. And I'm concerned that what you have before you doesn't quite get us there. I'll close with saying my members have approved permits for every single one of the operators that are in this room that are operating in this state, whether they're building a track or whether they operate tracks. So the way that we tried to structure this bill was to protect them as existing operators and treat them differently through a renewal process. But if you're going to be coming in new, you're starting from afresh and are going to have to make your case in order to go forward. So I stand with my members who stand with the operators that are in the room. With that, Mr. Chairman, we do appreciate your favorable consideration of moving this forward. I do think it's a positive step forward, and I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ryman. Committee, questions for Mr. Ryman? Mr. President, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Riemann, you mentioned the vote of the people was way back in like the 60s. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
In the 60s or 70s, you know, obviously a lot of those people are no longer with us, and a lot of those people in those counties, you know, weren't even alive or didn't live there at the time, and now they're stuck with that vote. How often should this vote happen, number one, and what would it take for, would it be a statutorial change to say every 5 years this thing needs to come up for a vote of the people? Because people change their minds on, they didn't anticipate in 1968 that pari-mutuel meant slot machines, right? Or they wouldn't have, I don't think they would have ever supported what we have. If they could see where we're at today, I don't think anybody would have ever voted for this. So going forward, what would it take, a statutory change to allow for this to come up every other general election or every other general election? What are your thoughts on that?
Is it Ryman or Riemann?
It is Reed.
Riemann, okay, sorry. I get it too, so I understand. Please, Mr.
Absolutely
Riemann,
understand.
go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chair Beitman, it's a great question. And I'll just talk to two of the counties. Unfortunately, we can't find records. I've been working with the county and with the Gaming Commission. We can't find records of when Platte County voters actually approved the activity. But I do know dates relative to the other two. So Teton County authorized it in 1973, and Weston County was in 1988. To your point, it might be worth, and Senator Craigo and I have had conversations of whether we shouldn't put a provision in statute that, at least for those that the Board of County Commissioners haven't authorized it, whether it shouldn't go back to a vote of the people. I suspect for the others that do have operations, I'll let you all figure out the takings and other issues that might exist there. But most of those are from the 60s up to the early 80s. The most recent two were Hot Springs in 2020 and Converse in 2022.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Sir, please give us your name and for the record, and we will love to hear your comments.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Dr. Mark Rennie. I'm president of the Cheyenne City Council and a member of the Wyoming Association of Municipalities Board. I just want to echo what Mr. Riemann said. We, WAM and the WCCA, have worked in concert on this bill going back to over a year ago, and we participated in the working group that was present for last year. So WAM has the same position as the WCCA. We have worked as a team, and we've never wavered on this. We would like to see this bill move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Rennie? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate your time. Any others? Good morning, sir. If you would, please state your name for the record and bring us your information.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jeff Darty. You'll notice that conspicuously absent from my attire today is a name badge, and that's because I'm here just as a consumer. I was trying to decide if I should speak or not speak, but some of you know this about me, some of you don't, but early in my career, I ran a racetrack, not a fancy one like Pimlico or any of those big ones, but nonetheless, we had some solid races and some pretty fantastic horses that ran out of there and some great trainers. And then I got into racing myself, and until my wife had announced the rule of 2001 where I would not be allowed to acquire any more racehorses without her express permission. So that sort of shut down the racing at our house. But I will tell you that I do enjoy racing. I guess I'm speaking as a consumer of racing to the various things that have been talked about today. Members of the committee, I will tell you this was set up and I supported it when it was set up and I still support it, but it was a bargain. And the bargain was in exchange for investments in facilities and investments in racing that certain machines would be allowed. And I think in some ways that bargain has been kept. In other ways, I think we have a lot of room for improvement. And one of the things that I had been hopeful for was that flagship facility that other states have that we don't. And I think we have people that are trying to move us in that direction, but we still don't have our Twin Spires-like facility. And partially it's because we don't have the demand for that yet. And so I do see that there's one that's trying to make a significant investment in a 1 mile facility. And since I'm on that topic, I think that one of the things I worry about a lot in horse racing is safety. And I think the safest track we can offer is a 1 mile track. And I think it's heartbreaking and I think it's horrible for the industry when we break down horses on tracks that are not capable and don't maximize safety. And so I really appreciate the efforts of the group who are trying to bring that in. And I really hope that you'll take a close look. I really like, with regard, we've heard a lot of discussion about the number of machines, and I don't know how many to tell you we should have out there. But what I will tell you is I want all of our gaming providers in the state to be successful, and I worry that once we exceed that saturation level that we're not going to be successful. One of the things that I liked about the Virginia model is there they approved a certain number, to Representative Heiner's point, and then within that number there was a lesser number. And by right, you could go to the lesser number, and then in order to get to the greater number, you had to put it to a vote. And we've heard some discussion of local control. I like that. That's the ultimate form of local control, is to ask those people, to President Beitman's point, have you lost enough of your favorite pizza places, or are you still okay with further impacts there? I lost several points on my pizza card, Mr. President, when one of those closed here, but I will say that I'm a consumer of those facilities here in town, especially the ones with pretty phenomenal ribeyes close to the border. But I would tell you that oversaturation doesn't help any of our providers out there, and I want them all to be successful. I do.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Endicott.
Thank you. Could you be more explicit about your concern over oversaturation? Do you support a cap then?
I do.
Is that?
Senator Endicott.
Thank you. Do you find that consistent with the free market?
Mr. Doherty.
Mr. Chair, Senator Nethercott, I am, as you know, an unabashed capitalist, but I also think that there are certain industries where government needs to step in a little bit into that market. And
Mr.
this
Chairman,
may
can I
be one
follow
of
up?
them.
Senator Nethercutt, please.
What type of industries are those?
Gaming industry is one of those industries. You know, you see, for example, on Wall Street, Senator, there is a lot of regulation that occurs on Wall Street because complete laissez-faire capitalism has problems that the market doesn't resolve.
Senator Nethercutt? Please proceed, Mr. Doherty.
Anyway, Mr. Chairman, I want to be brief, but I just would share those concerns more as a consumer of racing and a consumer of gaming out there. I'm not a heavy gamer, but I do enjoy going to the facilities here in town once in a while and want them to be successful. So I do appreciate the 100-mile rule in order to get people to the track facilities. I like it when it's vibrant when I go to the tracks, and so I would appreciate your consideration of that.
Any questions? Mr. Doherty? Just one curiosity question for myself, sir. When you're talking about a 1-mile track as opposed to a shorter track, why? I mean, for those of us that maybe do or don't understand racing completely, why is a 1-mile track significant as far as safety is concerned? And do you have information in regards to the length of tracks of the other tracks that are available in the state, or just the one?
I do. I don't want to, I will tell you this, and I think there are other far more people with far more expertise than myself who will confirm what I'm saying, but
As a former racetrack operator.
No, there are experts that are far more established. I'm not an expert on it, Mr. Chairman, but what I would tell you is that what happens on a turn is the horses change leads there, and if the turn is tight, as it is on shorter tracks, that's when you have a higher probability of breakdown. And if you notice, there are more breakdowns on a turn than there are on the straights of ways. And so that's why I think, and I think other people with far more expertise than me think, that those 1-mile tracks are the safest assets that we can run a horse on. And I think that's important for public perception and the safety of the animals.
Just one curious question beyond that. Is there any requirement in our current laws that require a full 1-mile track if you're going to operate and call yourself a track, or can you have basically anything?
Mr. Chairman, and there are people in the room that have far more expertise than me, but I don't think there is a requirement for a 1-mile track.
Okay, very good. Is that it? All right. Thank you, Mr. Dodd. Appreciate your testimony. Any other public comment? Public testimony? We are working on bill draft number 145, local approval for simulcasting. That is it. Committee, what is your pleasure? Bill is moved. Senator Crago, is there a second? Is second, Representative Harrelson. Okay, discussion. Committee, your thoughts? Going once, going twice, all right. Ms. Phillips.
Mr. Chairman, for 26 LSO 145, local approval for simulcasting for Management Council sponsorship for the 2026 session, Senator Crago?
Aye.
Senator Guru?
Aye.
Senator Nethercutt? Senator Salazar?
Aye.
Representative Bear?
Aye.
Representative Harrelson?
Aye.
Representative Heiner?
Aye.
Representative Yin has left, is excused. Vice Chairman Beitman? Chairman Nyman?
Aye.
9 aye, 1 excused.
Thank you, Ashley. Very good. Next on our agenda of representatives is LSO draft 168, working draft point 7, limitations on historic horse racing terminals. Was discussed by the task force. Is there any public comment? Please. Ms. Ellis. And if there are others, I mean, please, if you have discussion points that you'd like to bring up, don't hesitate to come on up and fill the chairs so we can move along. We are taking a good bit of time. We are a quarter almost after 11, so we're behind. So if we can move this along, that would be great. Otherwise, Ms. Ellis, please, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Affie Ellis with Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck, representing Cowboy Racing. I wanted to hand this out, and I want to tell you that Other states, as I mentioned, Kentucky, have this information on their website, and they update it monthly. But this is a document produced by the Wyoming Gaming Commission, and you'll see the three operators there, Wyoming Downs, Wyoming Horse Racing, on the other side, 307 Horse Racing. I apologize, you'll see in purple my scribbled notes. That was at the last terminal count as of October 1st. You'll see I wrote Downs 2310, that's how many they've been approved for. They've got 1,046 in operation. Wyoming Horse Racing, they're the largest approval, or entity that's been approved for games, 3,004, that's where that number came from, but they've only got 1,032 in operation. And then the 307 Horse Racing was cut off, I apologize for that, but they have been approved for 1,369 games and have 1,043 on the floor. These numbers might be old, they change every month, so the Gaming Commission would have the most accurate data, but it changes. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. I think this chart I've given you comes from April. The reason that I think you see a cap bill is we had heard some concerns, and there's a desire, I think there's a lot of frustration about the growth of gaming. Looks like it's unchecked, it's exponential, and so I think a knee-jerk reaction is, let's just do a moratorium. No more, whatever we've got here now, that's what we've got. And we have concerns with that. As I mentioned, we are building a full-mile track, millions of dollars in investment, and they made that investment based on the, notion that they could compete with the other two operators that are in the state of Wyoming. And each of those operators have thousands of games that they're allowed to play. If we're limited at 283 games, we will not be able to compete fairly. So the cap notion came from this idea that, if Wyoming does want to control the number of games, how do you do that in somewhat of a fair way? Some states, like Texas, actually have different classifications for tracks. I do think that there is a huge difference between an entity that spends millions of dollars to construct a privately owned track that will pay real property taxes versus an operator who leases a facility and operates the minimum number of race days and then gets to build the same number of machines. And so in Texas, there's a little bit of a distinction and preference over who gets permitted for certain tracks. And so we had that conversation in the Select Committee on Gaming. We did not bring that to you today. But to all of your point about, what are we protecting? Is it horse racing or is it gaming? We've really lost that connection to the machines. And so, if we had to do it over again and we had a time machine, if you went back in time, you could say, you get 1,000 machines if you open a racetrack in Laramie County, and maybe you get 1,000 machines if you open one in Rock Springs, and then you get more machines if you open one in Casper. But the tie being to live horse racing, and I don't think we've done that. So I don't know how you unwind it, but if if thinking about the cap bill, if you don't like it, those are some other kind of ideas out there that have kind of been thrown out there, but are not in front of you today. And so I just want to be clear that the cap bill didn't come as a desire to expand the number of games. I think it was a response to concerns about a moratorium. If the committee decides not to do a cap bill, that certainly doesn't hurt us, but we're lending our support of a cap bill in lieu of a moratorium. So that's the nuance that I want you to understand about why we're presenting this information. So Representative Bear, I gave you this chart in particular because you can see the city, the county, and this is where the discrepancy is, and the number of approved terminals versus the terminals that are on site at a location. In this old chart, if you look at Wyoming Downs, you'll see Cheyenne, Terry Bison. That's in the county. They were approved for 126 games, but they only had 86 on site. During the interim, we had a lot of conversation about why there's that discrepancy, and there are a couple of reasons. One, during COVID, a lot of these locations spread out their machines further apart to try and accommodate the 6-foot social distancing. So they spread out more of the machines, even though they were permitted for a certain number. Another reason is a lot of these games have gotten bigger. If you've ever gone to Las Vegas, the slot machines have gone from being fairly small to bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's why you see those numbers. But the Terry Bison Ranch, I just draw that out because there's, I believe, a construction project that will take that number from 126 to 600. And then if you flip around Wyoming Horse Racing's chart on the other side, you'll see in red some of those larger facilities. Cheyenne 3, which is located in Cheyenne, that's been approved for 1,000 games. It's currently got 267 on the floor. That's the Swan Ranch project that's close to the Colorado border. But you'll see the Evanston project And then, that's at 1,000 games, and then one in Laramie, the city of Laramie, Albany County. And so I just want to highlight, those are where you're seeing some of those big numbers. So if the legislature didn't like the 3,004 number, and you wanted to scale it back to what Representative Lean was talking about, something more like 12, I just wanted you to kind of see where some of those numbers in that proposed growth is. But I'm just showing you charts that the Gaming Commission provides. I'm not an expert on these projects, but representatives from all of the operators are in the room, so I'm sure they could answer those if you have further questions. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we support the cap bill in lieu of a moratorium. If the committee decided to not do a cap bill at all, that certainly doesn't hurt our feelings, but we would just ask, hopefully then you don't do a moratorium on machines, because that's an easy but very unfortunate, unfair way of treating us. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Questions for Ms. Ellis from the committee? None? Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Ms. Ellis.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to respond, sorry, there's so much information. There are some places that limit the number of gaming facilities. In the Indian gaming world, the state of Arizona has negotiated compacts with tribes. They have determined a certain number of machines per tribe, and so they distinguish between what are called rural tribes versus the Phoenix metro tribes. And so the rural tribes can actually lease their machines to the city, like tribes that operate casinos in Phoenix. And that was Arizona's way of trying to kind of balance things out, encourage the competitors to work together. So there are instances and examples. I'm most familiar of it in the Indian gaming context, but not by states.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. I do have one question quickly before we move on. Can these operators sell games back and forth to each other, or are they permitted specifically to that operation and exclusively to? Can they sell these among each other or trade these permits?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Prior to the law that authorized HHR machines in 2013, I believe Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing had agreements where one entity would open the building and maybe offer some games, and then the other operator would lease some of their machines to play in that building. And they did that at a time when they were trying to get these machines in operation without a statutory change. So the Wyoming Attorney General's office, I think it was in 2007 or something like that, said that the Gaming Commission was not authorized to allow any of these machines at all, told them to turn them off and get them out of the state. And it wasn't until 2013 that they got the legislative approval to bring them in. Since that time, I don't know if the Gaming Commission has allowed the leasing of machines between operators. I don't believe it's a practice right now, but it was something they did before there was clear-cut guidance on the legality of these machines.
Thank you for that. I guess my question goes to, with so many machines that are not actually being utilized now, I mean, if you look across the board, each operator is very close in the number of machines that are actually online and operating. One in particular has got 2,000 almost machines that are not using. Is that is a permit that stays for how long? How long is that permit good for? And if they don't utilize that machine, does that permit go away after a certain time? Or is it, I mean, is there a value there, I guess is what I'm wondering. Is there something tangible in those 3,004 in that particular instance?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to get out over my skis. I don't know what the Gaming Commission's agreement or conditions or any of that was when approving those machines. But I highlight these charts because they kind of show the numbers of where they are. So you'll see Wyoming Horse Racing has the largest proposed facilities. They have a couple that they'd like to open that will be over 1,000 games. Those would be appropriate questions for them. I don't know. Okay. The status of where they are in construction, all of that. And I don't know what the stipulations the Gaming Commission required are.
All right, very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, any other public testimony? Please. Thank you, gentlemen. If you would please just state your names for the record, and we will be glad to hear your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Matt Michaeli, an attorney with Holland and Hart. Just so the record is clear, I'm the attorney on the case. The lobbyist for Wyoming Horse Racing is Lori Uberkeit, but I represent Wyoming Horse Racing. And with me is Mr. Peter Ligori, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Peter Ligori, part owner in Wyoming Horse Racing.
Mr. McElwain, please.
Mr. Chairman, we appreciate the opportunity to be here. There's been a lot of discussion about my client and their permits and kind of that process. So we wanted to be here to answer your questions. I did want to start off with maybe taking a step back. I think it's important when we talk about this issue to understand we're here today in large part because it's been a success. And I don't want to lose sight of that what they saw, what the legislature brought forward in 2013 has worked. We have over 300 Wyoming farmers and ranchers, including myself, that supplement their income by raising Wyoming-bred horses. And those Wyoming-bred horses are running on Wyoming tracks. We've created this whole industry. So let's not forget the successful part of that. Truckloads of hay by the semi-load come from Goshen County down to my place regularly, probably way more than I wish. We use Wyoming vets. We use Wyoming farriers. That part of it has worked. And so I just wanted to bring us back to that this is a success story. I do think it's important now that we're here to continually look at it and continually try to think about it and to try to think about what this looks like going forward. I also wanted to talk just for a minute about the permitting process, and I'll let Pete talk in more details. But for us, we're the operator that's done the kind of the bigger destination type places. And the way it works is when you're doing this, it's obviously tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that we've invested. You're trying to de-risk that on the front end. And so you go and you get your permits, and you have your permits, and then you get financing, and then you start the construction of these facilities. Again, Pete will talk into more details, but the reason why we're the ones that have the big discrepancy in what's permitted and what's on the floor is we're building and expanding a lot of projects right now, including the one that Senator Kolb referenced, a major project in Evanston that is under construction, that will be done and will have those machines on the floor. And that we've making these investments and want to get all those machines on the floor. That's why we have the permits. That's why we're moving forward, is to get the financing, to come to Wyoming to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into this state based on the permits that we have. And I've talked about this with, I think, all of you. In any business, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's coal, whether it's anything that you're doing, regulatory certainty is the most important part of attracting investment. And so we've passed a law, we've created this environment, that regulatory certainty is what allows the investment to come. And so with that, I'll kind of turn it over to Pete.
Mr. Liguori. Mr. Chairman and other committee members, just to add a few points to Matt's discussion before I make some of my comments. The three operators back in 2021, 2022, engaged a third-party firm to try to estimate the economic impact of the equine business, essentially horse racing, at that time. And the report came back with roughly $150 million a year in annual input into the state. We are updating that study right now because of the significant changes that have happened in our industry, and I suspect that number will be north of $250 million a year, I would guess, but that's more to come. And happy to share that information with the legislature when it becomes available, because we think that's key in terms of what Matt's describing. This isn't just about slot machines or HHR machines or whatever you want to call them. It's really about maintaining and building a business, an industry. And I'll give you a very quick example. When we purchased the company, Wyoming Horse Racing, in December of 2021, the annual purses for our racetrack were $800,000. We're projecting the purses next year to be $3.4 million. So significant growth. And that growth has come from the investments we've made in the state based on the current rules. And Matt is correct in that our focus has shifted away from adding locations in the smaller communities and really focused on tourism dollars. And we call our properties touristic OTBs because they're really designed from the ground up to bring in outside customers from out of state and generate benefits for the horse industry as well as the state and community and counties that they operate in. And as it relates to our current plans for our 3,000 units, we plan on using all of them. And as Matt said, in some cases, these significant investments at the border properties take years to develop. Our Swan Ranch property outside of Cheyenne near the border roughly took us about 2.5 years from when we started design to when we opened. It just takes time to do these things. And at that time, we were the only operator that was willing to take a risk to suggest that there was an opportunity to bring in tourism dollars. So we did in fact open with roughly 300 units. The units on the floor today are 325, and we're currently going through a small expansion that'll take us to 400 units in the next, I'll say, 6 months or less. We're actively and have engaged with designers to build and expand the property again in another phase that'll include a hotel and meeting space and a number of other non-gaming amenities, because we really want to create that entertainment campus and entertainment destination, again, for mostly being targeted with Colorado visitors, but there's a good bit that are coming from Nebraska as well. We're replicating that same process in Evanston. That project is probably 90 days away from being open. We've invested over $25 million in that project. And again, we've built and designed phases for that to grow to its full capacity, assuming we get the positive reaction and see the business acceptance from the Utah customers that we think we'll see. And we're just trying to do this in a very efficient and smart financial manner, basically do it in steps as we go through the process. I should also just remind the committee that the approvals for these facilities have gone through city and county and gaming commission involvement, approval, and input. Our company has always taken the approach that regardless whether it's in the county or not, county only or not, we've gone to the local communities to say, this is something we're thinking about doing, what do you think, get the input, then move on to the county, and then ultimately present those plans to the gaming commission. So our two touristic projects have complete buy-in from the city of Cheyenne, Laramie County, as well as the city of Evanston and Uinta County. They're very excited about both of these projects, and we're committed to continue to invest in Wyoming. I did want to just mention the notion of lease track versus owned. For all intents and purposes, we own the Sweetwater track because of our contractual relationship with the county. And effectively, we have a triple net lease. So we have spent millions of dollars maintaining that track and building infrastructure to enhance the racing experience in Sweetwater County, and we're going to continue to do that. And that's part of our commitment to Sweetwater as well. We want the excitement to be there. We've been exploring and trying different things to create entertainment value, if you will, to allow people to come and participate in the races, and that attendance figures have been slowly growing, and we're committed to continue to push on those. I think I've covered everything. I know that there were a lot of questions throughout the day, and I wanted to make sure I hit them all. So I would stand for any questions if I've missed some points that folks wanted to get clarification on. I'm happy to address those if I can.
Thank you, sir. Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, so you're with Wyoming Horse Racing. What was your attendance this year at the track for in-person spectators that bought a ticket that came to watch horse racing?
Sure.
Horse racing?
The attendance. I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair. The attendance roughly midweek versus weekend, obviously different because we are running some Friday races versus Saturday, Sunday. But on average, we're somewhere between 500 and 600 people attending a day.
Follow-up?
500 to 600, okay. So it's safe to say you don't make your money on selling tickets to horse racing?
No, sir.
The money's in the slot machines?
Well, yes, the HHR machines provide the mechanism to really fund the purses. And that's the attraction in terms of getting, I think our general manager that runs the horse racing facilities continued to tell us as the purses have elevated, we are now attracting national level jockeys and horses to Wyoming, which is a first. And flipping that on its an ancillary activity is the Wyoming Breeders' Fund process that exists in Wyoming. The funds there have grown significantly, and a number of national trainers are breeding horses in Wyoming. And as part of that, it's renting the grazing lands and all the related things that Matt talked about in terms of the vet and the farrier and all the other activity that supports that. So the Gaming Commission can certainly provide specific statistics about the growth in the Breeders' Fund, but to your point, Vice Chair, the racing is a loss leader, for lack of a better word, to allow the broader economic impact for the state. So it costs us roughly about $1 million in operating expenses to run live horse racing. That's common knowledge. And then in addition to that, the cost of the purses. So next year we'll spend about $4.5 million to run our live race meet.
So, Mr. Chairman, I don't see any other business model that could, there's more people that go to high school football games, but we don't allow slot machines to be present to support high school football. I guess we could have prop bets, Mr. Chairman, on, but if the quarterback's going to throw 5 touchdowns, that certainly wouldn't lead to any shady activity going on there.
No, sir.
Certainly not. Or, we could have historic football terminals, and we can bet on past football games, but Frontier Days doesn't need this to have huge purses, because there's butts in seats. People come to Frontier Days because they want to see it. I don't think, this is to me bizarre that we're allowing gambling in the state of Wyoming only to support one industry where the people don't even really show up. So then when we try to regulate it, we get a room full of lawyers and lobbyists to protect it because there's huge money involved. And to me, this is the crux of this is the whole issue right here in a nutshell. And we've got our work cut out for us, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman,
I've got one before you here.
oh, sorry.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at some of the legislation that's in other states with HHRs, I noticed in Virginia, in order to increase the number of terminals, they had to increase the number of days of a race. So if you wanted so many additional terminals, you had to put one more day for your racetrack. What's your feelings or sentiment on something like that to promote more racetrack days in order to have additional terminals?
Mr. Gore?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Haraldson, I think that's definitely, I'm sorry. I apologize. Heiner, I apologize.
This whole thing is a little weird because I'm clear over in his lap getting over my, so go ahead.
Move that, Mr. Haraldson's over a little bit. I think we'll be in good shape. Thank you. So apologies. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. The idea of equating additional units to race days, that's certainly a potential solution. I think one of the things that we've talked a lot about in our company is, how do you preserve the attractiveness of the quality of races to attract that 5-star jockey and horse? And it comes down to, is more race days the answer, or is it higher purses, or is it a combination of both? And I think our conclusion was, essentially right now, we believe that the purses have to come first to get the attraction. Yes, more race days would be a good thing. So I think the reality for us is probably a combination if push came to shove.
Follow up.
Thank you for that response. Just as a follow-up to an earlier question by the chairman, when you get a permit for these HHRs, is that indefinite or is that a time period that it has to be renewed?
No, we, as part of the current rules of the Gaming Commission, we have a choice as an operator to renew our permits for 1 year or 3 years. So the longest period is 3 years. And at the renewal process, we go into a deep discussion about what our past performance has been in terms of did we do what we said we were going to do in the current permit period? And then also what the expectation is for the next 3 years in that process. So to answer your question, it's reviewed and discussed every 3 years in detail.
Senator Nethercutt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ellis had mentioned that Kentucky had got rid of their skill games, but obviously they have a robust HHR market and live horse racing market. So I'm just curious about your thoughts to protect the integrity of your industry in live horse racing and horses and farriers and hay and that whole industry that we've wanted to see thrive in Wyoming, and how that's currently being jeopardized by the explosion of all types of gaming, including online sports betting, skill games. And I know historically it's been the strategic decision of the gaming industry in Wyoming under the large umbrella of gaming to approach the legislature together until now, where they are seeing this type of feedback from the legislature, which recognizes a need for additional regulation, talks of caps from the free market of Wyoming, and just curious as to how Kentucky and the HHR and live horse racing industry there perhaps presented themselves and navigated that issue to limit and tailor gaming within the state of Kentucky, and how that might work with skill games.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercutt, I don't know that I can answer that question because candidly, I'm not that intimately familiar of the history of Kentucky, to be fair. I'd be speculating.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Chairman. Are you concerned about the explosion of all forms of gaming in Wyoming and its effect on the citizens for the state, particularly young men?
Mr. Gore.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercutt, I think some of the discussion we've seen is warranted and necessary about anti-money laundering and problem gaming are two serious issues that need to, as the industry grows, those activities and those support mechanisms need to be there. So if you're asking me, how do we balance all of the different forms of gaming growing in Wyoming, I think we've chosen to participate in the HHR and live racing space. I know that's, you want an answer. I don't know that I can just tell you that. After evaluating all of the different types of gaming, we made the decision to invest in that space.
Follow up? Good. Mr. Lagore, for a question that's come through my mind, what percentage of dollars that are turning in Wyoming actually go to the agricultural part of racing? I mean, when you're talking about bet fees, I ranch for a living, so I understand that.
Sure.
Buying hay, I will sell you hay if you'd like. But my curiosity question is, in the greater scheme of things, how many real dollars are turning in Wyoming, and what percentage of that actually is being moved through the agricultural community, the breeders and things like that, of the dollars that are actually moving through gaming that are specifically attached to horse racing? It's supposed to be a track, horses involved, but really we understand that gaming is what the machines is what's driving the narrative. We know that. But what real percentage? Can you give me any of those figures based on the dollars that are being spent or turning in Wyoming?
Mr. Chairman, off the top of my head, I cannot.
A percentage?
But the study is available, and we can certainly provide that would have that level of detail. I just don't remember off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, if I may chime in a little bit. We certainly have those numbers, we can get them to you. We weren't really planning to testify today, so we don't have them here. But I can tell you, when we've looked at it, roughly between 20 and 25% of the gross income goes to taxes, the Wyoming bread, all the payments that go to other places other than, so it's about a 25% income tax that they pay in addition to property tax and all the other taxes that are out there. If that's the sum total of all of it together, but we can get you the breakdown and we will.
I'm just curious from the standpoint of the actual dollars that are coming in, because that's the way it was coached or couched, was that your ag is really going to benefit from this and we're going to really develop again. But to me, as I've listened to the testimony and I've looked at this thing as developed, horse racing and the track and the horses are nothing more than a vehicle. And this is a means by which we can expand machines in Wyoming. And that's my concern. It's like what everybody thought we were getting to begin with has become what the little boy shot at. And now that is just something that's a necessary issue that we have to make work in this so that we can qualify to bring more machines in and develop what really is driving the narrative, and that's the real dollars that are being taken in by these machines. Hence the idea of we need more machines and we see an exponential increase in it. So I'm just curious. I mean, really, what is Wyoming getting in ag out of this as opposed to other revenues that are going elsewhere? So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just for clarification, we can get you the economic impact study information. Easy to do that, and again, we apologize. But when we think about the economic benefit to the agribusiness, I guess the question is, do we exclude all of the jobs that have been created throughout the different locations, or are you, as an example, we have roughly 300 employees in our company. About 35-ish, it's seasonal, it jumps to maybe 50, are really attributed to live racing, that activity. But do I exclude now all those 250 other people at work and that are essentially Wyoming residents? I just want to make sure, to me, it isn't just about direct horse racing benefit. There's a lot more going on than just that. And again, want to get you the information you want. So I'm just asking the question to make sure we can respond in a fulsome way. I
would like to see just a breakdown of exactly the economic impact, ROI, of what it's actually doing statewide for these communities. And then and I guess that's my issue in this, is that if we're going to use horse racing as the vehicle by which we're going to expand gambling and machines, then I'd like to know, Wrigley, what is the dynamic driving this? What is the real churn, real dollars that are coming in and where they're going? And I just hate to see somebody else having to try to prop up something that we really know is what's driving the narrative, and that's more machines, obviously. And so I'd like to see those impacts. Sure. Any other questions from the members?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I was going to address President Beitman's question when he asked it, and we got sidetracked a little bit, but that's a question that I've thought about a lot, right? Love Wyoming as much as anybody in this room, and what's the best thing for the state? And in 2013, if I was in your chair, I honestly don't know how I would have voted. I probably would have voted against it, if we're gonna just be blunt. But the reality is, we're here, we passed these laws, we created a system, people have come and invested hundreds of millions of dollars into our state. How do we treat them fairly? And I think that's the question you're grappling with. I think that's the question we want to engage on. And I'll talk to any of you on that process of, we can't go back to 2013. We're here, we've created a system, people have relied on that, invested hundreds of millions of dollars. How do we treat them fairly? How do we, in the best interest of the state of Wyoming going forward? And we're here, we're willing to talk to anybody. I hope you know that, and we'll engage in those discussions as much as you want going forward. The second point I wanted to close on is the bill that we talked about earlier, that local control bill, is a really good bill. And I think is a bill that does address a lot of the concerns that you've talked about. And I say that as the lawyer that has been involved in many of those negotiations with the county commissioners. And as the lawyer who was the lead lawyer on the Campbell County decision. It has been a gray area of what the local versus the gaming commission roles are, and that clarifies it. And President Beitman's question about the local pizza shop, nobody knows that better than the local authorities, and they have the ability to say no now. They have the ability to say you can't have it in that pizza shop, and that is clarified by that bill. And that's why I think that bill is a good step forward. And a lot of the things that we're all wrestling with is it defines what the role of the counties are, what the role of the cities are, and what the role of the Gaming Commission are in ways that haven't been defined before, and it gives clarity as we go into those processes. So, thank you.
Mr. President.
All right, one last question to you gentlemen. Would you support a compromise, if it's truly about horse racing, would you support limiting the location to the horse racing track and you can have as many machines as you want? You could build the Taj Mahal Casino and have 10,000 machines and make a theme park out of it. The Horse Palace of the World in Rock Springs. But that's your only location. You gotta close all your other locations down. You put it at the track, because it's at the horse racing track. You shut it down during days where you're running actual horses, where the 500 people show up that are just enthusiastic about horse racing. Would you support something like that?
Gentlemen, whoever would like to take that.
Mr. Chairman, what I will commit to is, I mean, we're willing to talk with you about limits on locations or everything on this. Limiting it to one location at the racetrack is tough. I don't think that's a viable model moving forward, but we're willing to enter into those discussions and talk about it. I also would point out that there may be, and I'm sure there are communities that want to have this there, that want to have these kind of facilities that would be denied that, and we're taking away that opportunity for them to receive that revenue. Right now, with the last bill we just talked about, the local communities get to decide whether or not they want it. If we come in and do it as a statewide mandate, you could be taking away opportunities from communities that want it.
Follow up?
I'd like to own a casino too, Mr. Chairman. It'd make me a lot of money.
Any other members? Discussion? Seeing none. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. All right, any other public comment? We are commenting on draft 168, limitations on historic racing terminals. None? Close the public comment. Committee? Your pleasure. Is there a motion? Going once? Going twice? Okay. Bill's been moved. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Seconded. Discussion. Any discussion? Senator Craig, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So obviously, we had lots of discussion on this bill in the select committee. And I voted no on this bill when we voted on it in the select committee. And part of the reason is I don't think this bill gets to the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. I think it's a much bigger issue. I mean, I think this is the perfect type of discussion for the select committee to work on next year. I really do. I think this is a conversation. I think the operators in this room know we have issues, that the public has issues with what's going on within the industry. We're all tired of a casino on every corner in every single, town where they're operating. We know that's a problem. They know that's a problem. I think they know if we don't do something about that problem, they're not going to like the solution. And this really doesn't get us anywhere. I think I've talked to all of them. I've talked to all the operators in this room, had good discussions with them about that. And I think they're willing to work with us going forward. But I don't think this gets us anywhere. I really don't. I don't think it limits gaming. I think we're saying, go ahead. What we're going to encourage them to do is all go get their permits tomorrow. And even if they have no intent on using them, they will come up with a plan to use them. And unless we put a very strict limit in here on how soon they have to use that, they'll even figure out how to do that. I don't think we can put a strict enough limit in there. They will make this happen. And I don't think that's not what any of them want. That's not what any of us want. And so I think we're actually going in the wrong direction. What we really need to do is consolidate where all of these operators have facilities, right? It's not a machine problem, it's a facility problem. And this doesn't get to the heart of the problem. And so that's why I voted no against it in committee, in the select committee. It's why I will vote no on it today, because I think we're hurting, not helping. But I do agree with everything that's been said up here. We got to solve the problem. But we're going to need their buy-in. we're gonna need them to help us come up with some of those solutions to figure out how we do that and do it well. So anyways, just wanted to say that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator. Senator Guru, you have your hand up, sir. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman. Thanks. Yeah, interesting discussion, good discussion. I also like to thank the task force. I think that they've done good work. And I was involved with TRW when we took this issue up. I was involved with appropriations when we took this up and been on CapFin. It's government at its messiest, but it's also government at its best. I think that we are getting to the right questions. I think that they were asked today. I think the speaker, I think you asked the right questions. Mr. President, I think you're on track too. The answers are elusive, but like I say, we're getting there. I think that I too am a no on this. I think it's about locations, not necessarily the number of units. I've evolved in that thinking. I was a big cat fan here just a year or two ago, but through this process, I think I'm evolving. But I also think that we need to consider that what this was set out to do, what it was Senator Wallace and Representative Wallace, Senator Schiffer were trying to do back in 2013 has been achieved to bring horse racing to another level. And they've done that. And we heard in testimony today, 3.4 million in purses, over 800,000. I think we're there. It's the question for me now is where do we go from here? Where do we go from here on splits, on where the state should be able to, the effects of this in the state of Wyoming, how that should be addressed? Also considering our local communities, I think we did that with the last bill. So I too am going to be a no on this, but I think that we are getting closer. And I think that another year with this, another interim, this committee, I think we're going to start honing in and getting to the right answers for Wyoming. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Gru. Any further discussions? Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Often, I think to myself, I wished I would have planted some trees 20 years ago, and I didn't do it. So when is the next best time to plant? Is today. I think this is far from what I would like to see, but it has a framework that we can work through the session, and I think it's time to do something. And I have a great deal of trust in 93 legislators to come up with a solution that'll be workable for all parties and be a win-win situation. I would like to take this to the floor and in the session work with it. I think we can come up with a solution. I don't think it's a year away. I think it needs to be done now, and that's why I'm going to be a yes for this. Let's move it on and see if we can come to something that we can all agree upon.
Thank you, Representative. Any other discussion? Seeing none? Ms. Phillips, please.
Mr. Chairman, for 26 LSO 168, limitations on historic horse racing terminals for Management Council sponsorship in the 2026 session, Senator Krigo? Senator Guru?
No.
Senator Nethercott? Senator Salazar? Representative Bear has left an absentee of aye. Representative Haraldson?
Aye.
Representative Heiner? Representative Yin is excused. Vice Chairman Beitman? And Chairman Nyman. That is 5 aye, 4 no, 1 excused. Sorry, I read that backwards.
That'd be backwards.
4 aye, 5 no, 1 excused.
Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate that. Okay, that ends for the bills that we have from, oh, let's see, wait a minute, is this, right? 279, oh, that's right. Okay, Mr. President.
I think you might want to do that.
We're going to have to, because we're at 5 minutes here before noon. We have been sitting a long time and going through a lot of information, so what is the pleasure of the committee? How long you want to do for lunch? 1 hour? Yes. You need longer? 1 hour, okay. We will be back in session here at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Please return.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we
Mr.
just take a short recess, just real quick before we break, and you and I and the Vice Chairman can talk about scheduling, and just maybe we can make an announcement before we go to lunch.
Oh, before we adjourn? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well,
that's for just a minute.
Okay, we're just going to recess briefly, and we'll be right back. It's a sidebar. Okay. Turn. We're back in. I have a couple announcements after discussing on a sidebar. We're going to be moving the number 3 item for today, the updates from LSO, to tomorrow. So if you were waiting to do on that, we're going to move that back to tomorrow because we have quite a bit of discussion coming yet this after lunch. And then also the discussion on the legislative emails, we're going to do that tomorrow as well. So we have enough time to be able to thoroughly discuss that. And we want to do some discussion on that. So if you're here for that, we're going to do that tomorrow as well. Item 3 tomorrow, that's the LSO updates, and then we will continue to work down through the list. So with that, we will be back here at 1 p.m. Thank you, everyone.